Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Auto affirmation announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Dr. Fuad Khan, MP, member for Barataria San Juan, has requested leave of absence from the sittings of the House during the period May 9th to May 23rd, 2018. The leave which the member seeks is granted. Members, I now call upon the House to provide condolences on the passing of Dr. Morgan Job, and I call upon the member for Tobago East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I join with the nation and particularly people of Tobago East in mourning the death of one of our own, Dr. Morgan Job. Dr. Morgan Job was known as an agriculturalist, an economist, a writer, a radio personality. He was also a very strong family man. Growing up in Roxborough, Tobago, I had the opportunity to interact with the Job family on more than one occasion. I remember when my daughters started their music lessons, it was at the home of Dr. Job's sister. And during that time of their training in music, they would have had the opportunity to interact with Dr. Job as well as his daughters. And what I remember about the man, outside of the politics, is his compassion, his love for people, and particularly his love for the development of Tobago, agriculture, and Tobago East in particular. Madam Speaker, today I join with his family, his friends, his loved ones to remember his legacy, to mourn his death, but also to remember that even though he's not with us anymore, he would have made a mark that would surely instruct the lives of all of us who remain in Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly those of us who remain in Tobago East and who contribute still to the development of agriculture in Tobago. May his soul rest in peace. I extend condolences to his daughters, his wife, his sisters, his nephew who I attended school with, Karen, his nieces, Jamila and Salia, who I attended school with, and all of the people of Belgarden, Tobago.
Member for Karen East Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm very sorry that pancreatic cancer took Morgan Job down so fast. He was a very decent man who wished that his country and his countrymen could find the wherewithal to be better and to do better. And he was always willing to contribute to public education and the common good. Dr. Job was an enlightened individual who shed light wherever he went. Sometimes the light was too bright for some, and perhaps too hot as well. But he shed light wherever and whenever he could. The thing he hated most was ignorance. And he did his very best to dispel it by sharing his thoughts and by making a plea for rationality. He saw ignorance as the inhibitor of personal development and as an underminer of community strength and national progress. Morgan Job was a simple man who was by no means simple-minded. His simplicity came from being a country boy who grew up in a rural environment with strong Protestant Christian values. He carried the experience of living in a number of countries, of having lived in a number of countries in his head, and he had a good stock of reading on which he could draw from time to time. And he was intellectually very curious and provocative. He was a critical thinker. He was creative and entrepreneurial and self-made. He was confident and had a broad worldview, but he could sometimes be brash, and he had strong views which he would sometimes carry as a crusade. He was proud of his Afro-Trinbagonian country boy roots, but he had lifted himself out of the prison of narrow domestic walls to embrace all humanity as the one race responsible for the future of civilization. Culture and values to him were more important than ethnicity and made the difference to him between success and failure, progress and backwardness. He cultivated the land, he exercised his mind, and he tried to develop others. An economist by training, he appreciated capitalism, but understood the limitations not just of the imperfections of the market, but the sociological, structural, and cultural impediments to inequality that could stand in the way of human effort. He understood and extolled the virtues of the law, of rules and conventions, which help to make society civil and civilized, and the importance of the recognition of property rights, as well as the protection of the precious nature of freedom of thought and speech. He himself had a fertile mind, a sharp tongue, and a clear head, and he was absolutely fearless. He was a public intellectual who liked to talk, to lecture, to engage in ideas, and to write down his thoughts in order to persuade others and influence their thinking. He cared for his country. He worried about its deterioration, and he was appalled by the manner in which those in political leadership positions would manipulate the weak, the vulnerable, and the uneducated, and fail to rise to the challenge of lifting them up, or perhaps more precisely from Dr. Job's point of view, failed to help them to stand up for themselves. At this time, the members of the opposition expressed condolences to his two daughters and to his family and all his friends in Tobago and in Trinidad. And we asked that God embrace him and take him in his arms so that his soul may rest in peace.
Honorable members, I join with you in paying tribute to Dr. Morgan Job, a former member of this honorable House who served as MP for Tobago East during the 5th Republican Parliament. Dr. Job, during his parliamentary stint, held the portfolios of Minister of Tobago Affairs and later as Minister in the Ministry of Finance. He also acted in several ministerial capacities, including Minister of National Security. His other career callings took him to places far and wide, including such places as Tanzania, Brazil, Kenya, and Canada, just to name a few. But he always returned home, home to his beloved Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Job shall be remembered for his contributions in and out of this House to the national discourse, and as forthright, and maybe some may term him as controversial as he may have been, there can be no dispute that in all things he spoke his truth. In honoring him, citizens have described him as a man of ideas, a great classical guitarist, a true fighter, a great thinker, a brave man, a teacher, a prophet, a historian, a misunderstood man, and a valuable asset to this country. And to that all-encompassing list, I shall add from my own observations, he was at all times a confident man, a man who was never openly attracted to material things, a humble man. At home, he was bigger than his career, for he was also a loving father, brother, colleague, friend, mentor, and dedicated servant of our Twin Island Republic. I take this opportunity to express my deepest condolences to his family during this time of mourning, and in particular to his daughters Zifa and Zinga, who were classmates of my own daughters. And I pray that the Almighty grants them the comfort and strength needed in this time of bereavement. I now ask that we stand and observe a minute of silence as a mark of respect. May his soul rest in peace. Honorable members, I have directed the clerk of the House to convey our condolences in writing to the family of the late Dr. Morgan Job.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay the following papers. The consolidated audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards for the year ended September 30th, 2014. The audited financial statements of the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited for the year ended December 31st, 2016. And Madam Speaker, I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Reports from committees.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the third session, 2017-2018, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation and variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2018.
Prime Minister's questions.
The member for Orpooch East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate the benefits accrued to Trinidad and Tobago from the work of United States-based lobbyist Art Collins from October 2015 to date?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, for very many years and under very many administrations, the sitting government of Trinidad and Tobago noted the need to have its interests advanced in Washington and elsewhere. And against that background, the governments of Trinidad and Tobago have consistently hired lobbyists to open doors, make representations, and to further the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago at these locations, making it easier to carry out our foreign policy, our economic policy, and our national security initiatives. Art Collins brings all those benefits to us at this time in the same vein of earlier lobbyists who have served the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental question, Member for Puchis.
Thank you very much. Could the Prime Minister indicate any one single benefit that has accrued to this country from the employment of Mr. Collins?
Prime Minister.
I thought I just did that, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, Member for Puchis.
Could the Prime Minister confirm that Mr. Art Collins continues in his role as lobbyist and on the payroll of the people of Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, to the best of my knowledge, when Mr. Collins was sourced and hired, he was contracted for a period of time, and to the extent that that contracted period has not expired, in that case, he would still be on the payroll.
Member for Naparima, question 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister state when the findings of the report of former Ambassador Christopher Thomas on Dominica's request for a waiver of contributions to the Organization of American States will be made public, and the action or actions he proposes to take regarding the report?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the report of Ambassador Christopher Thomas is in the hands of the Office of the Prime Minister and is subjected to considerations. And as soon as it is appropriate, that report will be made available to the Standing Committee on Foreign Policy, which I understand is available to receive such report. And at the appropriate time, my office will make that available to the Parliament, to that committee.
Supplemental, Member for Naparima.
Would the Prime Minister, thank you, would the Prime Minister be prepared at this stage to tell us whether the report attached responsibility to any party for issues which arose from the incident?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the contents of the report indicate that there were shortcomings on the part of persons who hold office in this country, and that report will be made available to the committee.
Supplemental, Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the Prime Minister subscribe to the Westminster principle of ministerial responsibility? And if so, will he act accordingly, consistent with that principle?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I have never hesitated to subscribe to the principle of Westminster.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister inform this House of the most recent estimated date of arrival of the MV Galleon's Passage to Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I just want to congratulate members on the other side for their consistent interest in the Galleon Passage. And I'm just nervous that one of them might try to punch a hole in the hull. But Madam Speaker, the Galleon's Passage has been delayed by 3 to 4 weeks for various reasons, including bad weather and delays at designated ports of arrival in Honolulu and Acapulco, where the vessel had difficulty in getting berthing spots on its arrival. Madam Speaker, this small vessel has just completed a comprehensive trip completely across the Pacific from China to, where is it now? To Mexico. That's approximately 6,000 miles. And after that journey, the vessel is currently, as it has been exposed to routine maintenance along the way, and is now experiencing some maintenance at Acapulco. The current estimated arrival time, and I say this pending good weather and also a progress at Havana when it gets to Cuba, where some improvement works on the vessel has already been announced to be done. All things being done against that background, we expect that the vessel could arrive in Trinidad and Tobago at the end of the month.
Supplemental question, Member for Couva South.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Taking into consideration that it was a new boat that was procured by the Cabinet Committee, can the Prime Minister verify the Acapulco's Harbour Master's report that the boat has a faulty water pump and the power supply has been affected?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, today is a busy day for us in this Parliament, right? If a little coastal vessel has just done 6,000 miles and it has an issue with a water pump, I am particularly happy that the only issue the boat might have after 6,000 miles is a water pump issue.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister inform this House?
May we have order, please?
Could the Prime Minister state who is the current President or acting President of Petrotrin?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the board of Petrotrin, under Cabinet's guidance and instructions, had been taking very drastic restructuring actions at Petrotrin, which has led to the removal of a number of persons at the top of the company. The company is currently actively engaged in the process of seeking the qualified persons to serve as president and in similar positions. In the interim, the Cabinet has approved an executive body from the board for a 6-month period, and I think two months of that has gone, so in a few months that will expire, and hopefully the board would have sourced a president and other posts that will run the company.
Supplementary question, member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister state who is the one individual who is responsible for the day-to-day running of the Petrotrin as we speak?
Prime Minister.
No,
Madam Speaker, I've just answered that.
Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Could the Prime Minister indicate whether or not those persons who have assumed executive authority at Petrotrin are also being paid foreign travel as part of their compensation package?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I do not have that information, but if the member wants to file an appropriate question in the appropriate place at the appropriate time, you will surely get that and other answers. We'll file it here.
Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Question number 5, I imagine.
Question number 5.
Could the Prime Minister provide an update on the planned divestment of shares of Trinidad Generation Limited?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance had indicated at an earlier time some intention to divest some of the equity that the state owns in Trinidad Generation Unlimited. That is still under consideration, Madam Speaker, as we move towards the creation of the NIF. That is being considered, and if it is concluded in that way, this House would be made aware of it, but at the moment, consideration is being given to having that maybe as part of the contributing package into the National Investment Fund.
Supplementary question, member for Oropouche East.
With that in mind, could the Prime Minister state any expected date for the offering of shares of TGU?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I think I see a question here that applies to that. So if can I answer that now? Or
Answer that and we'll vacate.
Okay. Well, I will answer question number 6 now then, because that is question number 6.
Prime Minister, if you answer it as supplemental to question number 5, we'll then vacate question number 6.
Could the member assist me by repeating the question?
The supplemental question is, would the Prime Minister state the expected dates of the offering of shares of TGU?
Madam Speaker, I just said that the TGU shares are being considered as part of the complement of shares that will go into the NIF. So there's no share issue of TGU shares to come, because if it goes into the investment fund, it wouldn't be TGU shares that would be offered. It would be the investment fund. And there's a question here asking about the investment fund and what date it is supposed. So if the member will wait to hear the answer to his side's own question, then he might get the answer he's seeking.
Supplementary question. Member for Old Pooch East, question number 6.
Thank you very much. We could have saved all that if he had sit
Member,
down.
please just
Could
answer.
the Prime Minister provide an update on the creation of a National Investment Fund announced in March 2018, through which shares in a number of companies would be offered to the public?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, if the member for Old Pooch is trying to confuse me, I think he has failed. Because I will now say the establishment of the National Investment Fund as a closed and investment fund to transfer into the NIF assets of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the Deposit Insurance Corporation, CLICO, and CLF. These fund products would be offered to the general public units in this National Investment Fund, and that is to be determined. And these units would be traded on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. And engagements of appropriate consultants and legal advisors to establish these objectives are well underway, and it is expected that the Minister of Finance will speak to that probably today, and we expect that this fund would be available by the end of July 2018.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Based on the Prime Minister's recent statement on the Cougar Children and Adult Hospital, could the Prime Minister state the terms of engagement with InterHealth Canada?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the discussions are underway to establish an arrangement where that hospital would be made available for use both for nationals and regional and international clients. Those discussions are well underway between the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the university, and InterHealth Canada. InterHealth Canada being in this arrangement by a government-to-government arrangement with the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Canada. These discussions are currently underway, and I am not now in a position to give any specific date as requested by the colleagues on the other side.
Supplemental member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, can you indicate whether as part of these discussions, whether any arrangements will be made to guarantee employment to local doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the outcome of the discussions will determine what happens with respect to that question.
Member for Chaguanas East, question number 8.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Subsequent to any arrangement between the government, the University of the West Indies, and InterHealth Canada, could the Prime Minister indicate whether the public would be paying for services at the existing Cougar Children and Adult Hospital?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as I've said before, discussions with respect as to what is going to happen there, what kinds of procedures, what kind of ownership and operational protocols will take place there, those discussions are currently underway. So the questions that members are asking now are premature.
Member for Carney Central.
Prime Minister, with all due respect, the issue of whether the hospital is a paying or a hospital for which free services, in which free services are offered, is a policy question. And I don't think
Member, question, please. You have 15 seconds.
And I would like an answer to the policy question of whether they will be fee paying or not.
Madam Speaker, this government has no intention of running away from this country. And if members on the other side would listen to what I've just said, we are currently engaged in discussions to determine what will be the approach. So that these issues that are being asked, members are eager to find out the answers, but it is the discussions that we are having that will determine those answers. Those answers will flow from what we are what is doable, what is possible, and what the outcome of the discussions are. And I simply ask my colleagues, don't be so previous, just wait, we're not running away.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Prime Minister, in engaging in discussions, is it not prudent that you have a position in which you go into the negotiation, subject to negotiation?
And what make you think you don't have a position?
Prime Minister. Member for Chaguanas East. Order. Member for Chaguanas East.
Supplemental?
Supplemental
question.
Yeah.
I know it's...
Supplemental question, member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the exuberance has started early. The question is, if we do not know what is happening, and you're telling us to wait, could you tell us when did these negotiations start and where?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I have just told this House that this government is engaged in discussions with other parties, negotiations and discussions taking place. And if what the members of this House are asking me to do is to publicize the government's position under the misconception that we have no position and no policy, I will not outline the government's position in the middle of negotiations to prejudice those negotiations to please anybody in this House.
Member for Chaguanas East, question number 9.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 9, and I will read the question very calmly and slowly. Could the Prime Minister state why the government has discontinued construction of 70 schools at varying levels of completion as at September 2015, despite financial allocations in each of the subsequent financial budget statements of the Infrastructure Development Fund IDF projects?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I will answer very slowly and very clearly, and I hope my colleagues will hear me. An allocation made in the
Prime
budget.
Minister. Members, it's very early in the day. I hope we will abide by the provisions of the standing orders with respect to shouting across the floor and loud outbursts. That is not going to be tolerated today. Prime Minister.
Yes, Madam Speaker. An allocation made in the budget is simply an expectation to spend revenue if the revenue becomes available. As the Minister of Finance treats with all demands on the exchequer, it has turned out that we do not have enough money to do everything that we want to do, including completing schools. And therefore, we make the most of what is available. And some schools are completed. Some schools have not yet been completed. But we are consistently working on it, and only recently, Cabinet has approved further allocations and expenditure to complete some of these schools. And Madam Speaker, we are in this position because my friend on the other side had issued a huge amount of contracts, some of them paying monies before the work has been done. And if those contracts had been funded at the time that they were issued, and that so much money has not been stolen and wasted in this country, we could have fixed all those schools a long time ago.
Madam Speaker, based on the Prime Minister's response with respect to Cabinet's approval for funds to complete these schools, will the Prime Minister be able to supply us with a list of the schools that are due to be completed based on the additional funding?
Madam Speaker, I would not be able to supply that today, but I'm sure if the member files an appropriate question, the appropriate minister, he will get a comprehensive answer.
Member for Oropouche West, question number 10.
Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, in relation to a press release issued by the Office of the Prime Minister indicating the possibility of purchasing a cargo vessel from Australia. Could the Prime Minister indicate the estimated budget for this acquisition?
Prime Minister.
Speaker, I am not aware that the Prime Minister's office issued any press release about the purchase of any cargo vessel.
Supplemental question, member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Is one of the objectives of your visit and your delegation visit to Australia to look at ferries to purchase a boat? Is that an objective?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I am not one of the Prime Ministers of Trinidad and Tobago who go abroad, see a boat, and say, I want one of that.
In a fog. And then come back and change your mind.
Order.
All that has been said by this government, by me or by spokespersons for this government, is that one of the issues that we would look at is the possibility of obtaining new ferries which can be made available through any assistance or programs out of Australia. That is as far as it has gone so far. So talking about price and talking about what I'm going to do in Australia, Madam Speaker, I'll simply ask my colleagues on the other side, just wait a little bit now, just wait a little bit. Why are you so hurried? As soon as you mention anything, they want answers to everything. We're not there yet.
Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Is the Prime Minister aware that a press release issued by the Office of the Prime Minister stated categorically that on they visit to Australia, they would look at the possibility of purchasing ferries for the sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago? Are you aware of that? And if you were aware of that, why did you not say that in the beginning?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, just for the benefit of the public, because in recent months, persons who are not in the know or general mischief makers have been confusing a cargo ferry with a passenger ferry. We are currently in the process of approaching the time when we place orders for new passenger ferries and also a cargo ferry. From Australia, the passenger ferries are built by Incat and Ostal. So any reference to Australia is specifically to deal with passenger ferries. And we have done nothing, Madam Speaker, to date other than to be looking towards the possibilities that may be available to us coming out of Australia. That's where we are at the moment.
Member for Chaguanas, question 11.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Given that the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center is an important plank in the government's diversification strategy, could the Prime Minister state what is being done to address the decline of Trinidad and Tobago as a recognized international financial center?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, it is so not surprising that my colleagues on the other side could only see the negatives. I am not aware of any decline of any international financial center in Trinidad and Tobago. What I'm aware of is that the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center is for the first time making meaningful progress towards the establishment and expansion of business process outsourcing in Trinidad and Tobago. For example, Scotiabank's Shared Services Center in Chaguanas, which serves the region, is now employing 800 persons. That is not a decline, that is progress. Madam Speaker, progress is also being made towards attracting a large Asian bank, a North American bank, to establish regional financial services in Trinidad and Tobago. That is not a decline, that is going forward and upwards in the correct direction.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, may I ask the question? You have given one example of a business process outsourcing as an optimism for the International Financial Center, which was started under our government. Could you tell us, apart from that initiative and the potential for the Asian, what other mechanisms, measures, or outcomes or successes we have seen to say it was not a situation of decline?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as far as I'm aware, whatever was there before in terms of employment and growth has doubled. And Madam Speaker, even if the first component, the first increment was there is no decline from what was there. But they forever want to give the country the impression that everything is going from bad to worse. There is no decline at the International Financial Center.
Member for Oropouche East, question number 12.
Thank you. Based on recent newspaper reports of government's intention to embark on a $9 billion housing program, could the Prime Minister state the source of funding for such an endeavor?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the newspaper report that the member speaks about was very clear, crystal clear. But if he needs assistance, I will help him. The funding that is to attend the housing construction program in Trinidad and Tobago, government-driven, would come largely from mortgagors, meaning many persons who will pay for their unit by taking out a mortgage at the time when the unit becomes available. So it is their money paying for their house through the mortgage program that will contribute to the funding. Also, Madam Speaker, we are engaged in the invitation and incentivization of the private sector in public-private partnership, where private sector agencies or persons can bring to the program their funding to create housing units, which through the HDC would add to the component. We already have 4 or 5 of those projects on the way. Madam Speaker, we also will continue to fund, particularly for those persons who will be dealing with rental issues as their housing solution, with allocations from the consolidated fund. And Madam Speaker, the HDC will continue to collect its mortgages from existing estates, and wherever there are surpluses from that arrangement, that will also be used in the assistance and facilitation of the creation of additional new units. And also, Madam Speaker, we will be very well benefited if the member for Oropouche East stay far from the HDC.
Thank you very much.
Order.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. Bearing in mind that the member of Oropouche East has never been fired from the Ministry of Housing, could you indicate, has never been fired away, could you indicate as a former fired Minister of Housing whether the PPP projects have reaped any benefit within the last 3 years? Have you built one house through this PPP measure? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, if the member for Oropouche East would like to get a comprehensive answer to that question, if he files an appropriate question, we'll give him a comprehensive issue to every house that was built, every kitchen that was built, and every minister that has been fired as it has been built.
Supplemental, member for Oropouche East.
Could the Prime Minister indicate whether it is the policy of the HDC to evict persons who are up to date with their rental payments at this time?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question.
He's going mad.
I would just ask all members to I would just ask all members to contain their outbursts and remember that we are governed by parliamentary decorum.
Urgent questions.
Member for Oropouche West.
Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Works and Transport, in light of reports indicating that the MV Galleon's Passage is currently moored in Mexico due to a faulty water pump, could the Minister indicate when the vessel will be repaired and allowed to continue its journey to Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The raw water pump is scheduled to replace today. We shall be advised of the departure schedule from Mexico later today. Thank you.
questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 2 questions for oral answer. We'll be answering both. There are 6 questions for written answer. We are asking that questions 200 and 207 be deferred for 2 weeks, and we have the answers for the other 4 written questions.
Deferral granted.
Thank you, ma'am.
Member for Orput West.
Speaker, question number 220 to the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very, very much, Madam Speaker. During the period 2011 to present, the total amount spent on the plan for organ transplants in Trinidad and Tobago via a partnership with Spain was approximately TT $150,000. This allowed for expansion of transplantation using deceased organs, donor organs. To date, there have been 22 deceased donors, resulting in 41 deceased donor kidney transplants and 2 cornea transplants. The answer to part B is no. The answer to part C is yes, already established and ongoing. The answer to part D is the procurement procedure is as follows. A potential donor is identified by the intensive care unit consultant of the respective hospital. The medical director, National Organ Transplantation Unit, NO2, is contacted with respect to characteristics of the patient to determine if the case would qualify as a donor. 2. Brainstem death is confirmed by conducting 2 independent tests by 2 consultant physicians who have no prior care for the patient. These tests are done 6 hours apart, and the patient's next of kin is invited to witness the test. After brainstem death is confirmed, 2 transplant procurement managers, TPMs, approach the patient's next of kin to inform them about the possibility of donation and seek permission for donation of kidneys, corneas, or both. If this is a natural death and permission is granted, the next of kin signs a consent form to provide photo identification for themselves and the potential donor, as well as proof of relationship such as birth or marriage certificate. Thereafter, the TPM, Transplant Procurement Manager, collects the brainstem death test report, and an independent designated officer from the RHA reviews all the documents to ensure that consent was obtained according to accepted standards of approval. And once relevant consents and permissions have been obtained, the organs are procured at the RHA, where the donor is being nursed and transported to the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex in the case of kidneys, or Port of Spain General Hospital in the case of corneas for transplant. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary question, Member for Orput West.
Honourable Minister, with respect to Part C, how many local health officials have been trained thus far?
Madam Speaker, I don't have the exact answer, but that could be provided in a subsequent question.
Supplementary question. Supplementary question from Member for Fysabat.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for that response, Minister. Can you indicate when the health sector will be in a position to facilitate these organ transplants on a 24-hour basis?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will get that answer for you, Member.
Supplementary question, Member for Orput West.
So is there an education awareness drive to educate people about this initiative?
Yes, there is. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Orput West.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 221 to the Minister of Public Utilities.
Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam Speaker, the normal water distribution schedule to the following areas as follows: San Francisco, Tuesday 6 a.m. to Thursday 6 a.m. Sang Village, Tuesday 6 a.m. to Wednesday 6 a.m. And Woodland, nightly from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The water supply to these areas and surrounding locations were adversely affected by operational issues on the WASA's South Transmission System associated with intermittent reduction in flows from both the Caroni Water Treatment Plant and the Point Lisas Desalination Plant. With effect from Wednesday, April the 11th, 2018, the regular water schedule have been restored to these communities. Residents in the affected areas were advised of the changes in the water supply schedule via public notices in the media. Truck-borne water supply was also provided to residents on request during the period of the disruption in the supply of pipe-borne water.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers, personal explanation on the supplemental order paper. The finance supplementation and variation of appropriation, financial year 2018, bill 2018, in the name of the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance. Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 64-1B, I beg to move that the next stage of the finance supplementation and variation of appropriation, financial year 2018, bill 2018, be taken later in the proceedings.
Honorable members, the question is that the next stage of the finance supplementation and variation of appropriation financial year 2018 bill 2018 be taken later in the proceedings. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business, government business, motions.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 122.1, I beg to move that Standing Order 45.1 relating to the time limit for speeches and as set out in Appendix 1, that the Minister of Finance be allowed 55 minutes to complete his presentation this morning. No, 10 minutes more.
I expect that this is being moved under Standing Order 122.
Sorry, that's what I said, ma'am. 122.1 and then 45.1 and Appendix 1. That's what I said.
All right, so that in these circumstances, I have to grant leave, having regard to the nature of the business and the anticipation that I have heard in the public domain. I'm prepared to grant an extension to waive the standing order and grant the extension as asked. Might I ask, in terms of the opposition? And therefore, I would expect that if, having regard to the fact that I have granted the 10 minutes, is there going to be such an application on your side? Okay, so that therefore I'll ask if you move that, and I'll deal with that also. So the 10 minutes is granted.
Thank you very kindly, ma'am.
Speaker, I will do the same thing that the leader of government business did in the standing order 120. What? 122.1 and also 45.1 and Appendix 1. The same amount of time as a mover of the move.
So I now put the question to the House. The question is that the time be extended For the move of the motion, the Minister of Finance, and for the first person responding on the side of the opposition, the time be extended to a further 10 minutes so that they will each have 55 minutes for their presentations. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the third session, 2017-2018, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation and variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2018. Madam Speaker, upon our assumption of office in September 2015, some 2.5 years ago, this administration, led by Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, committed itself to resolve two serious challenges facing the country, namely, firstly, repairing the damage to our fiscal accounts, which had deteriorated significantly after the drastic fall in oil and gas prices in mid-2014 from US $108 per barrel in 2014 to US $26 per barrel in 2016, coupled with declines in crude oil and gas production. It is worth repeating that revenue from petroleum fell from over $20 billion in 2014 to less than $1 billion in 2016 after the government changed, a 90% decline. At one point in 2016, gas production dropped to below 3 billion cubic feet per day, down from over 4 billion cubic feet per day in 2015, a 25% decline. The process of adjustment to the global oil shock of 2014 and production declines in oil and gas has thus been a very challenging experience. It has not been easy dealing with a $20 billion loss in annual government revenue and the adverse effects of the extravagance of the former administration. Secondly, reversing the persistent decline in the economy, which has been with us for several years. In the face of these two challenges, it was imperative that the economy be reinvigorated and put on a self-sustaining basis to ensure that the welfare and standard of living of our citizens was not unduly impaired. Madam Speaker, I present the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the supplementation and variation of appropriation financial year 2018, Bill 2018, for the consideration of honourable members in the context of these public policy objectives. I would also provide this honourable House with an update on some of the public policy initiatives being implemented by this administration to facilitate the fiscal consolidation process and the turnaround in the economy, which is underway. Madam Speaker, after a long and discouraging period of economic decline, we are now witnessing a welcome upturn. Early estimates are indicative of a growth forecast of 2% in 2018, 2.2% in 2019, rising to 2.5% in 2020. And Madam Speaker, contrary to the negative commentary of uninformed spokespersons who speak without having any facts, the turnaround is being driven by economic expansion in both the energy and non-energy sectors. Within the energy sector, the full impact of the Trinidad Region Offshore Compression Truck Project, on stream in April 2017 under this administration, and the Juniper Platform on stream in August 2017 under this administration, is now materializing. I don't know why they don't like to hear good news. Beginning in the fourth quarter of 2018, a number of new gas fields would begin production, which would boost gas production levels over the medium term, rising from 3.37 billion cubic feet per day in 2017 to an average of 3.8 billion cubic feet per day in 2018
3.94 billion cubic feet per day in 2019, 4.05 billion cubic feet per day in 2020, and 4.14 billion cubic feet per day in 2021. These production volumes are being driven by enhanced activities among our major oil and gas upstream producers. Under BP, Juniper is fully on production. Angeline is to come on production at the end of 2019. Cassia gas compression project will be in operation in 2020. The Chalk project will come to an end in 2021. Exploration drilling would be taking place in the period 2019 to 2021. And future field developments will be taking place from 2023 and beyond. Under EOG resources, exploration and development drilling will begin in 2019. Under Shell Trinidad, drilling in Starfish is in progress with expected first gas towards the end of this year. Development drilling in the Dolphin field will commence in the second quarter of this year. Block 5C, Bounty and Endeavour, development would commence in 2022. Under BHP Billington, gas supply will be maintained to NGC at 340 million cubic feet per day for the next 2 years, and development of Block 3A is expected in 2023. Under De Novo, production is expected to continue at current levels. Madam Speaker, with average gas production at significantly higher levels, up 20% from the 2016 levels, we have revitalized the energy sector. This boost in production is due to the hard work of a dedicated team led by the Honorable Prime Minister, and including the Minister in the Office of the Attorney General and Office of the Prime Minister, and the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. This team has worked unwaveringly. Madam Speaker, I don't know what's wrong with them. Disgusting.
Members, I'm on my legs. I know we are all eager to participate in this debate, and we shall all get there. I would like to hear the Minister of Finance, as I would like to hear each of you in your contributions. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, let me repeat. The boost in production is due to the hard work of a dedicated team led by the Honorable Prime Minister, and including the Minister in the Office of the Attorney General and Office of the Prime Minister, and the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. This team has worked unwaveringly in complex negotiations and discussions with the oil and gas companies and the downstream companies, both here and abroad, to secure this country's future, in stark contrast to the empty posturing and grandstanding of the past. And this effort, coupled with appropriate adjustments by the Ministry of Finance to our oil and gas taxation regime, after detailed study and analysis, is already bearing fruit from a revenue outlook. Accordingly, the energy sector is well poised to meet the demands of the downstream sector over the near-term horizon, thereby supporting our medium-term growth recovery. Further ahead, access to additional gas from Venezuela will generate substantial opportunities for strengthening and supporting our economy. Madam Speaker, the pickup in the energy sector is having a knock-on effect on growth in the non-energy sector, where that sector is projected to break even in 2018 after years of decline, with gross estimates for the non-oil sector in 2019 of 1.2%, rising to 2.9% in 2020. And I stress these are forecasts for the non-oil sector. These improving growth forecasts are welcome in the context of the lackluster performance of the economy over the 2013 to 2017 period. Allow me now to share with you some actual figures for revenue collection in the non-oil sector. Our projection for the collection of taxes on income and profits in this fiscal year, up to April 2018, for other companies, as defined in the estimates, which excludes oil and gas companies, was $3.8 billion. The actual collection was $4.9 billion, an increase of $1.1 billion. Drilling deeper into the figures, in the petrochemical sector, collection of corporation tax has moved from 371 million in the period October 2016 to April 2017 to 1.2 billion in the period October 2017 to April 2018, an increase year on year of $835 million. Very importantly, Madam Speaker, in the non-energy sector, excluding oil, gas, and petrochemical companies, collection of corporation tax has moved from 1.8 billion in the period October 2016 to April 2017 to 2.3 billion in the period October 2017 to April 2018, an overall increase in the collection of corporation tax in the non-energy sector of $500 million year on year, with particularly revenue for assembly-type industries increasing by 146 million year on year, and revenue from the financial services sector increasing by 153 million year on year from October to April. It is clear, Madam Speaker, therefore, that not just the oil sector, but the non-oil sector is finally recovering. Total net collection of corporation tax in all sectors is up year on year for the period October to April by $1.3 billion. In the energy sector in particular, despite Petrotrin's recalcitrance, actual collection of petroleum profits tax and supplemental petroleum tax, excluding royalties, is up by $500 million year on year for the first 7 months of fiscal 2018. Royalties, excluding Petrotrin, are also on target to reach $2 billion in this year. Further, because of the better than expected increases in natural gas production in the second half of 2017, the GDP figures for 2017 are being revised upwards, and we expect that instead of negative growth of minus 2.6% in 2017, the actual figure will be closer to minus 1%. This improved outturn for 2017 and the expected growth in 2018 will have a substantial effect on our nominal GDP, which is expected to increase by 9% to $168 billion in 2018. This will also have a direct positive effect on our debt to GDP ratio, which is now estimated to drop to well below 60%, even with the planned borrowing program in 2018. Our inflation rate, Madam Speaker, has hit record lows. As reported by the Central Bank in its March 2018 Economic Bulletin, headline inflation dropped to 1.3% by the end of 2017, the lowest level in many years. This low inflation rate, Madam Speaker, is a direct result of this government's macroeconomic and monetary policies and is intended to cushion the effect of the recession on the population. It is to be noted that our inflation rate is currently well below the global average of 3.5% and way below other oil-producing countries, such as Nigeria, with an inflation rate of 14% for this year, and Egypt and Libya, each at 32% inflation for this year. You hear those numbers, Mr. Speaker? Other oil-producing countries, Madam Speaker, other oil-producing countries have inflation rates varying from 14 to 32%, whereas in Trinidad and Tobago, inflation is 1.3%. Our economic recovery is thus taking place in an environment of price stability. And as a result of our policies, we expect growth without high inflation, which is the most desirable outcome. Madam Speaker, in October 2017, we formulated our 2018 budget on price assumptions for oil at $52 per barrel and gas at 2.75 per MMBTU. Since that time, crude oil prices have been strengthening and have averaged US $59 over the first 6 months of the fiscal year. In fact, Madam Speaker, WTI oil crossed US $71 per barrel yesterday. And I looked at it this morning and it was still over $71. A word of caution, however, to those who think that high oil prices automatically translate into higher revenues. Regrettably, at the current fixed prices for gasoline and auto diesel, a high oil price creates a requirement for a high fuel subsidy. Indeed, if oil remains at US $70 a barrel, the fuel subsidy could reach as high as $900 million in 2018, which was not budgeted for. Additionally, our national oil company Petrotrin, which produces almost 60% of the country's oil, is not paying its taxes and royalties. At current prices, this translates into $1 billion lost in revenue in 2018, which is untenable. It is imperative, therefore, that in addition to transforming Petrotrin into a viable and profitable organization, we must also complete the work on an appropriate formula that allows the price of fuel at the pump to move up and down with the movement of the price of refined petroleum products. As stated previously on more than one occasion, it is our intention to have this mechanism in place by the end of 2018. As to the future, based on the best advice available, we do not envisage oil or gas prices to deviate significantly from the current trends, particularly in the context in the pickup of global growth now being forecast for 2018 at 3.6% and 3.7% respectively. I turn now to revenue and expenditure. Since our assumption of office, this administration has been rebalancing the economy to cater for lower oil and gas prices and lower production volumes. In October 2017, this House adopted the 2018 budget, which established expenditure of $50.5 billion, including a capital expenditure program of $5.1 billion and revenue of $45.74 billion, including capital revenue of $6.42 billion. A fiscal deficit of $4.76 billion, or 3% of GDP, was projected to be financed through net external borrowing of $3.69 billion and net domestic borrowing of $1.07 billion. I can now report that our revenue projections for 2018 are on track. This is the first time in 3 years. When deposits in the suspense account at the Treasury are taken into account, we have collected in excess of $19.5 billion in current revenue up to the end of March 2018, as compared to the projected collection of $18.7 billion. We are $700 million ahead of the game, actually $800 million. Our projected capital revenue, largely due to come from the recovery of debt from CL Financial and its subsidiaries, has not yet fully materialized. But we are making significant progress towards the launch of the National Investment Fund, which is intended to monetize the assets transferred to the government from CLICO and CIB. I will deal with this matter later in my presentation. Madam Speaker, in keeping with our program of fiscal consolidation, the expenditure by the end of March 2018 is estimated to be $21.69 billion, some 15% lower than the originally projected mid-year expenditure of $25.03 billion. The lower than program expenditure arises from reductions in the purchases of goods and services, capital expenditure, and transfers and subsidies. However, and significantly, expenditure on wages and salaries has remained at the budget levels. Expenditure on the capital program reached $1.54 billion in April 2018, and we expect to close out the year at close to $4 billion in PSIP expenditure. Delays in project implementation and the careful processing of claims for payment in the context of our focus on prudent cash flow management are contributing factors to this reduced level of programmed expenditure. Madam Speaker, the rebalancing of the economy from the unsustainable and profligate expenditure of $62 billion in 2014 by the last administration to a more realistic but still difficult level of $50 billion in 2018 is taking place within a structured and well-planned framework. Despite the difficulty the adjustment process is moving steadily in the right direction. By way of example, the monetization of the CLICO assets is in progress. And nearly 7 years after it was placed in compulsory liquidation, CLICO Investment Bank has made its first dividend distribution to its creditors, including the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The Ministry of Finance has been reviewing the evolution of budgeted revenue and expenditure and has determined at this 2018 mid-year review that while expenditure should continue to be constrained, it should be reprioritized. Accordingly, although government expenditure for the year as a whole has been revised downwards by 1.62 billion or 3.3%, we are providing through supplementation and variation an additional 213 million for much needed expenditure in key areas such as, but not limited to, the Tobago House of Assembly is receiving an additional $20 million to fund the expansion of its Agricultural Access Roads program and $100 million in reimbursement for back pay for TRHA workers. The Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs is receiving $30 million to meet the cost of legal and other fees arising from matters raised in the Commission of Inquiry into CL Financial and Colonial Life Insurance Company. The Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts is receiving $2 million to enable the National Commission for Self-Help to assist individuals in Tobago whose homes have been affected by flooding and other damages. The Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries is receiving $38 million, of which $31 million would fund the cost of the subsidy due to farmers under the Agriculture Incentive Program, and $7 million to meet the cost of claims submitted by farmers for the loss of crops as a result of excessive rainfall and consequential flooding during the month of October 2017. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is being provided with the sum of $23 million to meet expenditure for the Senior Citizens Grant to September 30th, 2018. The Ministry of Works and Transport is receiving the sum of $62.5 million to continue and expand its infrastructure works program. The Ministry of Health is receiving the sum of $121 million to assist with payments to trade creditors, among other things. And the Ministry of Education is receiving the sum of $159 million to pay for security and janitorial services at schools, among other things. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Finance has determined that the oil and gas price assumptions and other assumptions which inform the revenue projections for the 2018 budget should remain as is for the time being. Notably, in stark contrast to 2016 and 2017, we expect to generally meet our fiscal targets for 2018. However, the actual outturn for 2018 will depend heavily on the soon-to-be-launched National Investment Fund. As a result of these revenue and expenditure adjustments, the overall deficit for 2018 is now being projected at approximately 4.2 billion, or over 500 million lower than the original 2018 budgeted amount of 4.76 billion. Relative to GDP, the budget deficit is now projected at 2.5% of GDP. Compare this, Madam Speaker, to last year's deficit of 8% of GDP. Progress is truly being made. We are moving into a period of long-term fiscal health, and we are doing so at reasonable unemployment levels. In 2017, unemployment was on average in the vicinity of 5%, compared with an average of 4% in the time of plenty from 2011 to 2015. The economic adjustment is also taking place with stabilization of the public debt. As at March 2018, our net public sector debt to GDP ratio was 55%, down from 62% in 2017, well within international benchmarks and well below our planned limit of 65%. Furthermore, our external financial savings or financial buffers are at healthy levels. At the end of April 2018, notwithstanding injection by the central bank of the government's foreign reserves into the banking sector, of US $6 billion over the last 3 years, our net official reserves were US $8.11 billion at the end of April, or import cover of over 9 months. Indeed, for the first time in years, we actually saw a small increase in foreign reserves between March and April 2018. This careful management of our foreign reserves and our exchange rate since 2015 flies in the face of the predictions of the prophets of doom and gloom, who told us that our foreign reserves would evaporate in 6 months unless we devalued the dollar to 10 to 1. How wrong these experts were. Further, the net asset value of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund was US $5.87 billion at the end of April 2018. This was over US $200 million higher than the US $5.65 billion in the HSF at the end of September 2015, despite withdrawals totaling US $637 million between 2016 and 2017. Clearly, therefore, all the old talk from members opposite and uninformed commentators about the government raiding and destroying the HSF was unfounded foolishness. Truth is, the HSF has more money in it now than before. We have managed the HSF prudently, resulting in income of over US $850 million from the fund since we took office. It was those considerations, Madam Speaker, which led S&P Global Ratings to confirm the recovery which is now taking place in Trinidad and Tobago, and informed the S&P affirmation of the Trinidad and Tobago credit ratings. Madam Speaker. They're ridiculous. Madam Speaker, let me just read this. They can't help it, you know. It was those considerations which led S&P Global Ratings to confirm the recovery which is now taking place in Trinidad and Tobago, and informed the S&P affirmation of the Trinidad and Tobago credit rating with the retention of our investment grade status of long-term sovereign rating at BBB+. Further, Madam Speaker, we are in no doubt that had the most up-to-date production data been available to S&P in a timely manner, not only our credit rating, but our outlook would have been retained. Most importantly, Madam Speaker, this is the first time in 3 years, it's necessary to repeat, it is the first time in 3 years that the credit rating of Trinidad and Tobago has not been downgraded. The downgrade began under the UNC, and this is now the first time in 3 years that the credit rating of Trinidad and Tobago has not been downgraded. As our economy continues to improve, we expect a ratings improvement over the medium term in the context of our improving internal and external balances and the increasing likelihood that our gas supply would meet the demands of our downstream sector on a sustainable basis, and the pickup in the non-energy sector would be strengthened. With respect to financing, Madam Speaker, in the first half of the year, our internal financing operations generated an excess of resources which was utilized to cover the shortfall in external financing requirements. We are now filling that gap with the recently executed US $300 million or TT $2 billion loan agreement with the Andean Development Corporation, the Development Bank of Latin America, or CAF. As the economy adjusts to lower levels of revenue and expenditure, we're ensuring that the adjustment will take place in a growth-oriented environment with appropriate and adequate facilitating mechanisms. Let me share with you some of those activities. With respect to infrastructure, we are safeguarding the gains which are emerging in the domestic economy we are tackling the most binding impediments to growth. Our priorities include improving the quality of infrastructure, strengthening governance and institutions, and enhancing the business climate. Some examples are highways. Our road network is at various stages of implementation. Some are at the conceptual design stage. For instance, the Valencia-Toco Road, Madam Speaker, this is ridiculous. They're like children.
Members, I'm on my legs. Minister of Finance, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our new road network is at various stages of implementation. Some are at the conceptual design stage, for instance, the Valencia-Toco Road, and others like the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway extension to Manzanilla, although temporarily suspended, and the Solomon-Ho-Choi Highway to Point 14 are in full execution with completion dates in 2019 and 2020. The Curep flyover, which would improve significantly traffic in the east-west corridor, is scheduled for completion by the end of 2019. In Tobago, in order to meet the demands of a tourism-driven economy, the A&R Robinson International Airport is being modernized at a cost of $500 million, excluding land acquisition. A public-private partnership utilizing a build-own-lease-transfer mechanism will establish in 2020 the new airport terminal in Tobago and associated works. At present, the Development Bank of Latin America is supporting the project with technical advisory services. Beach facilities. Madam Speaker, visitors to Maracas Beach would soon have an engaging and exciting experience with the modernization of facilities at that location. Maracas Beach will now become an important visitor point in the itinerary of international visitors. Other major beaches are being upgraded, Manzanilla and Las Cuevas. Facilities will be completed in 2018, and rehabilitation works are far advanced at Vicini. Hospitals. Madam Speaker, our hospital program is well underway, including our drive to enter the area of health tourism. To that end, and in collaboration with the Government of Canada, we are rebranding the Couva Medical and Multi-Training Facility as a first world hospital and medical training facility. We have secured an international operator for the facility, InterHealth Canada. The facility will be jointly owned by the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the University of the West Indies. In the interim, the Government of India is offering opportunities to healthcare professionals to contribute to training at the facility by teaching traditional Indian medicine. Madam Speaker, this hospital, like the others which we are now establishing, will offer state-of-the-art healthcare to our citizens and promote health tourism. The Point 14 Hospital is expected to be completed in 2019. It would make available 100 beds to service up to 100,000 of our citizens in the Southwest Peninsula. The Arima Hospital is expected to be completed in 2019. It would make available 150 beds to service up to 150 of our citizens in the Northeastern District, including Dabadi, La Joqueta, Malabar, and Aruca. The Port of Spain Central Block, which is expected to begin construction in 2018, on completion, will provide 540 beds to service up to 500,000 of our citizens in North Trinidad. I turn now to institutional arrangements, the National Investment Fund. Madam Speaker, the debt owed by CLICO to the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is finally being settled. Whoa. As an initial step, we are monetizing approximately $4 billion of that debt with our initial public offering of 49.9% of the shareholding of a newly incorporated company, the National Investment Fund Holding Company, into which will be transferred the selected assets of Colonial Life Insurance Company, CLICO Investment Bank in liquidation, as well as a shareholding of the Trinidad Generation Unlimited, TGU, among other assets. We propose that the initial public offering will take place in June 2018, next month, thereby serving to widen and deepen the domestic capital market, and at the same time ensuring that all of our citizens, large and small, but Madam Speaker, there's a drone over there, there's a running commentary. Yes, it's very difficult.
It's Doppy.
It's the Pari and Naparima, it's a drone.
If we can allow the Minister of Finance to complete this contribution, that I know that we're all eager to join in the debate, we'll do it in sufficient time. Minister of Finance, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We propose that the initial public offering would take place in June 2018, thereby serving to widen and deepen the domestic capital market, and at the same time ensuring that all of our citizens, large and small, participate in the benefits, dividends, and shareholding growth flowing from the quality of the companies in the National Investment Fund holding company. In particular, in contrast to those naysayers who said it couldn't be done, let me give some details of what this government has achieved so far in terms of the recovery of the 23 billion pumped into the CLICO bailout. To date, as part of the first distribution of assets from CLICO Investment Bank, a total of 42,475,362 shares of Republic Bank, valued at $4.3 billion, have been transferred directly to the corporation sole or state enterprises and CLICO for onward transfer to the government. This represents 26% of Republic Bank. It is to be noted that a further 25% of Republic Bank was already held by the CLICO Investment Fund. In addition, 23% of One Caribbean Media, valued at $200 million, has been transferred to the corporation sole or state enterprise and CLICO for onward transfer to the government, as well as 29.9% of Angostura, valued at $1.07 billion, 5.4% of Whitco, valued at $402 million, and 19.5 million shares of Home Construction, valued at $476 million. This government has also recovered $3.8 billion in cash so far from CLICO since September 2015. And we have also recovered lands in Tobago, valued at $186 million for the site of the proposed Sandals Resort. The government is also actively pursuing the sale or acquisition of shares held in Methanol Holdings International Limited, valued at over $2 billion, as well as the recovery of another $500 million in bonds. And this is not all, Madam Speaker, since there remains a further approximately 40% of Angostura held by CL Financial or CLICO, among other assets to be recovered. A selected portfolio of these assets will thus be placed in the National Investment Fund for offer for sale to the public in 2018. We anticipate that in the first instance, the value of the shares that will underwrite the fund will be between 8 billion and 10 billion, of which we plan to offer up to 49.9% in this year, 2018. Our target date for the launch of the National Investment Fund prospectus and the offer for sale of shares or units to the public in the NIF is June 2018, and our objective is to monetize the assets of the fund and realize our projected capital revenue by the end of July 2018. At this juncture, Madam Speaker, let me point out that with respect to the recovery of billions of dollars of taxpayers' funds that has been spent on the CLICO bailout, this government and this Minister of Finance have achieved what our predecessors failed to achieve. Right. Without any ballyhoo or carrying on, since we took office in September 2015, we have so far recovered from CLICO and CIB 26% of Republic Bank, valued at over $4 billion for the benefit of all our citizens, and $6 billion in cash and other assets. Before I continue, allow me to say that details of the performance at mid-year of various ministries and state enterprises and specific variations of appropriation will be dealt with by the respective ministers. My statement today is primarily intended to report on the fiscal outturn for 2018 thus far, and to give an insight in how we plan to finance the service of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for this fiscal year, and how we plan to achieve the variation of appropriation and supplementary funding that we are discussing in this debate. Please also note, Madam Speaker, that because of time constraints, this statement is not exhaustive. It is simply not possible in 55 minutes to report on everything that we are doing and achieving. It's so much. However, I can give some brief details of specific projects as follows. The industrial estates and business parks of evolving technologies, e-tech, are being modernized and expanded with the aim to assist in the diversification of the economy. 29 bids have been received for an existing commercial building, the Duncan Street complex, and 5 underdeveloped land areas in Reform, Presal, Connector Road, Frederick Settlement, and Taruba. Evaluation of bids is now in process. The sale of the rice mill owned by National Flour Mills to a preferred investor is in an advanced stage of conclusion. The securing of an investor to partner with the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the management of the Vehicle Management Corporation is also advancing to the RFP stage. I turn now to property tax. Madam Speaker, we are making progress in establishing the long-envisaged property tax regime. In early February 2018, we introduced in the House of Representatives 2 pieces of legislation, the Property Tax Amendment Bill 2018 and the Valuation of Land Amendment Bill 2018, which seek mainly to correct anomalies which exist with these 2 pieces of legislation. I wish to make it clear that contrary to rumor, there is no plan for retroactive application of this tax. Accordingly, the waiver with respect to the payment of property tax would be extended at this time to the end of December 2017, since it is our policy to collect the tax in the year that all of the required administrative work is completed, such as, for example, the valuation of 50% of properties in Trinidad and Tobago in various categories, the Revenue Authority. Madam Speaker, like the property tax regime, we have made substantial progress in finalizing the proposed structure of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, which is absolutely essential to stop the billion-dollar leakage of tax revenue and tax avoidance that is prevalent in Trinidad and Tobago today. I wish to put honourable members on notice that we will be bringing the required legislation for the Revenue Authority for the consideration of this honourable House in the near future, and that after seeking advice from eminent senior counsel, we are of the view that the legislation is best passed with a special majority. It is thus our intention to send the Revenue Authority Bill to a joint select committee of Parliament, and we look forward to the comments, contributions, and recommendations of the opposition and the independents in this committee. This major institutional reform would underpin our efforts to stem the revenue collection leakages now inherent at the levels of the Board of Inland Revenue and the Customs and Excise Division, and also strengthen our compliance risk management methodologies. Honourable members will recall that on March 16, 2018, I shared with this House the Tax Administration Diagnostic Assessment Tool, TADAT, performance report on Trinidad and Tobago, which was not very complimentary about our local tax authority. The recommendations from this report are guiding our tax reform and modernization agenda, with its emphasis on improving business processes and automation. These skills will be enhanced as the staff transitions to the Revenue Authority, which, now embracing best practice standards in domestic tax administration, will improve efficiency and tax mobilization. We would witness the full benefits of this reform in the next fiscal year in the context of the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. The gambling industry. Madam Speaker, the Joint Select Committee of Parliament is hard at work on the review of the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill, and we expect that if all goes well, this legislation will be finalized for the approval of this House by the end of this year, 2018. In 2019, therefore, we should have in place a well-structured and regulated gambling environment, generating good quality jobs and making its rightful contribution to public revenue. Procurement. Madam Speaker, we now have in place a procurement regulator and board. With staffing and training in progress, the new procurement regime utilizing best practice will be operational shortly. In terms of assisting business, Madam Speaker, The US $100 million Exim Bank foreign exchange facility is now operational with the grant to the Exim Bank of a license by the central bank to trade in foreign exchange. Eligible, established, and fledgling small and medium-sized manufacturers would now be able to access the facility to finance material inputs for their export operations. This strategic initiative is geared to promote the expansion of our local export sector, while at the same time creating a new financial model to improve our foreign exchange earnings. This is a budget promise that has been delivered. The Business Development Fund, Madam Speaker, our $50 million business development initiative, is at an advanced stage of implementation. The facility would finance through grants the working and seed capital for small and medium-sized businesses, which we envisage to become key drivers of economic progress. Border control. With respect to border control, I am pleased to report that at long last, the recently installed mobile scanning technology at Point Lisas is strengthening our border security with modernized custom functions. This will add another dimension to the security of our environment. The Port of Port of Spain will follow shortly. Importation of contraband, specifically narcotics, illegal firearms, and ammunition, will now be detected with modern scanning technology and interdicted, while at the same time, trade will be facilitated through easier inspection and faster delivery times. Madam Speaker, we are moving into an era of macroeconomic stability, which is now underpinning our recovery. As I indicated, the economy is turning around. In fact, Madam Speaker, it has turned around. Revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker. The non-oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker. The energy sector is booming, Madam Speaker. But we are very much aware, Madam Speaker, that the continuing consolidation of our fiscal finances is an essential condition for achieving our objectives. Our tax and expenditure adjustments and broad-based reforms are contributing towards the establishment of this foundation. Over the medium term, we are improving tax administration and budget procedures, and we are seeking with World Bank technical assistance to eliminate waste and duplication in large areas of expenditure, such as education, health, national security, and social programs. We recognize that this process is of a long-term nature and is painstaking, but it is essential for growth to be placed on a self-sustaining and long-term basis. And Madam Speaker, just recently, we had the benefit of a technical assistance team from the IMF who is assisting us with what is known as fiscal transparency. And soon, Madam Speaker, for the first time in this country, we will have data, fiscal data, published and available to the public on a regular basis, Madam Speaker. For the first time, the public will be able to see expenditure and income on a real-time basis. For the first time, Madam Speaker, the public will be able to understand the assumptions that underpin the budget process for Madam Speaker. This government believes in transparency. This is the first government that has decided to do this, Madam Speaker, to publish data and make it readily available to every citizen of this country. We are not hiding like our predecessors. We are not hiding from the rating agencies. We are not hiding from the International Monetary Fund. We are not hiding from the authorities. As a government, Madam Speaker, we would always ensure that the benefits from our economic development are shared equitably among all members of our national community, and all shall be treated equally and fairly. I wish to caution, Madam Speaker, however, that we are not out of the woods yet. After the sacrifices and prudent fiscal management, after the sacrifices and prudent fiscal management of the last 2.5 years, our economy is turning around, but we have to be careful. In particular, our core revenues from taxation are still fragile and still below 40 billion, while we are running a $50 billion economy. But finally, we're experiencing growth and recovery in 2018. Madam Speaker, we are convinced that as long as we as a people are disciplined and productive, our country will recover, grow, and prosper. From all indicators, we are on the road to economic revival. For my friend from Lavantil, in the words of Johnny Nash, later made famous by Jimmy Cliff, I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. Madam Speaker, I wish now to commend to this House the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the Finance Supplementation and Variation of Appropriation Bill. The object of this report and bill is to supplement and vary the appropriation provided for by the Appropriation Financial Year 2018 Act 2017, and to authorize the utilization of any sum accruing from a reduction of expenditure under a head of expenditure for the purpose of meeting any liability incurred through the increase in expenditure under other heads. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I beg to move.
Honourable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing... I'm having some difficulty even hearing myself. Honourable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the third session, 2017-2018, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation and variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2018. Member for Superior.
Thank you very much, Madam. May I inquire? My lady, may I inquire how much time would I be allotted, please? Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you. I'm sure you'll welcome her with open arms.
And Mariano Brown too.
Together with Mariano, him too. Madam Speaker, this mid-year review coincides with government's midterm of their time in office. And given the minister's optimism over the last several days, as well as that of his Prime Minister, I think, like others in the population, we had great expectations with respect to what the minister would share with us today. And I was clear that he would not be like Gollum last year, but that he would be today like Frodo, the true hero, genuine hero, revealing his plans and policies to save Trinidad and Tobago from despair, defeat, and destruction. And so, Madam, I listened attentively. Sure.
There are devices in the House. I'm hearing a device, and would the member please go outside and get it under control? I'm sorry, Member for Superior, please continue.
Leave me alone.
Member for Superior.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much. So, Madam, I listened attentively, as I'm sure many of us all did. I listened. And at the end of it all, I realized that nothing has really changed. Speaker, last year, October, the Honourable Minister delivered his budget statement 2018. And his mantra in that was, and I quote, changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. After listening to the Honourable Minister, it is clear that nothing has changed. It is clear that he has told us nothing that will put us on a sustainable path, and instead is more of the same old paradigm, and definitely no sustainable path. You see, this government has demonstrated that it remains, and up to today, that has been very clear, it remains handcuffed to the energy sector and the gains from the energy sector. And as we know, that is a sector that is exposed to external shocks, whether they be price shocks, and in this case here in Trinidad and Tobago, that is tied with production and output. So what does this government do and continues to do? Same paradigm. It's the same, plantation to port, from the sugar, just sending it away. And the same we mine the hydrocarbons, we send it away. It's the same paradigm. It's the same economic model that they have handcuffed themselves in. So what do? They wait for the windfalls from the energy sector, yes? You wait for the price to go up, and then what do? You summon everybody with the good news, we are booming, we are booming, we are booming. With the price gone up 1 month, 2 months, nothing to tell us how you're going to increase production, nothing to tell us how you'll incentivize that sector if you want to tie and handcuff yourselves to the energy sector. But it is clear that the energy sector cannot put us on a sustainable path on its own. And so what we've seen today, government on its last legs summoned us to this house ready to tell us, look, we are going to continue to crush the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Having undermined and destroyed the economic fundamentals in less than 3 years, they now want to pull the plug on the development program. The Minister of Finance, unable to chart an economic course forward, has taken the decision to raid or deplete the IDF, the Infrastructure Development Fund, to take from that fund and put it into recurrent expenditure. All at the same time, I said, we are booming, we are booming, we are booming, but you're taking out of the IDF to put into recurrent. Well, you are so booming. Why would you do that? Why would you take it out from IDF, from recurrent expenditure? This is a colossal testimony to the failure of this government to generate sufficient revenues in spite of the host of taxes they have flung on the poor and underprivileged in this country. Now, Minister, Madam, this is not the first time they've done this, The Infrastructure Development Fund last year, and yes, we may have done it, but what is interesting is that the wording, the rationale for taking out of the IDF, the wording is identical to the words that we used last year. So when you go, let's remember, this IDF was set up by a UNC government, by then Minister Brian White, under Section 43(3) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, and it was for the monies to be placed in the fund to finance, wholly or partially, certain capital infrastructure projects. That was the purpose of this fund. And last year, here's what the minister said when he took, I think it was, he took a large sum of money out of the IDF. In fact, it was $1.3 billion taken out of the IDF. And listen why, the rationale he gave us. Funds provided for capital projects under the IDF will not be fully utilized in fiscal 2017, given that contracts have not been finalized as initially projected. In addition, outstanding bills have not been verified. This is his SF3 note, page 4 of 2017. This year, 2018, is the same old. Funds provided for capital projects under the IDF will not be fully utilized in fiscal 2018, given that contracts have not been finalized as initially projected, and the drawdown on funding is based on overall cash management. So, same old rationale for raiding development projects through the IDF. And then the minister tells us he can see clearly now, and a very lovely song. Very lovely song. I think many of us even saw the movie with the Jamaicans and, how they were. Imagine a country that has no snow. They were bobsledding in the snow. And, I think that the minister is more like Stevie Wonder. You remember he can't sing. He can't sing. Saying he can see clearly now. I mean, whatever came here today. And so the Minister of Finance, I'm saying, having failed to raise revenues, now wants to thank Almighty God, and how great am I, he says to all of us, how great he is. When it is all due to really timely increases in prices, and thank God to the government I led that is now giving the groundwork that was laid by the Honourable Kevin Ramnarayan for these projects in Juniper and all those others that he mentioned, truck and all this. The groundwork was laid during the period when we were in government. Parrot this economic turnaround, that is empty because people cannot feel such good fortune, because majority of people in this country are in the throes of poverty. They are at the mercy of the criminal elements. They're depressed in a newfound state of joblessness. Correct. And so what I think now appears to be a paradise that we left in 2015 is now a nightmare republic under the member of the president. And here we are as the Prime Minister and his band of merry men go off on another jaunt to absorb taxpayers' dollars, soak up precious foreign exchange. What is left behind here? Where is a country that has been crashed, and life has never been as nasty, brutish, and short as it is now in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I ask if we can remember or think of any concrete project or investment that the member Diego Martin West has brought back from these joints and these foreign trips. As they jet off to the Far East, the engine on the Galleon's Passage stumbles somewhere on the western seaboard, between Honolulu, I think, and Mexico somewhere, as if we needed a reminder of bungling incompetence and bold-faced corruption. When it comes to the area of procurement, this government's approach has been deplorable. They have thrown away the handbook on good governance and proper procurement. They have shelved the procurement policy. They began by hiring the services of a US-based lobbyist. Absolutely no procurement process. Sole select tender, said that he was his friend, hired the lobbyist Art Collins and the group. Today, when the member asked, give me one single thing they did, the Prime Minister became very angry. We must ask. Will not answer. I said, I just answered that. That was his response. And we face that all the time in this Parliament. Yes. When it's our right, it is our right to ask those questions and to expect replies. Majority of times we get no replies. And when the answer is given, it is really, sometimes I don't even know they even hear the question because the answer is not even related to questions being asked. And so, here we are. They like the art, they hired the art. They admit there was no open invitation for proposals for resort in Tobago for sandals. They like sandals, they want sandals. They spend millions on this Galleon's Passage. Somebody told them about this boat, they like it, they buy it. We don't know any tendering process.
Madam Speaker, 53(1)F, please.
Honourable members, there is a continuous murmur in the chamber. Yeah. I'm having some difficulty. I'm so happy that we each identify each other. And therefore, you all yourselves from the floor give support to the complaint that I'm now drawing to your attention. So I expect it won't arise again. Member for Superior.
Thank you, Madam. And again, questions asked about Australia and the comments reported in the newspaper that the Prime Minister says they're going to Australia to see about boats. That's procurement Diego Martin West and his government style. And we cannot really be surprised about their conduct because they ran away from the Parliament's GSC when we were dealing with the procurement legislation. To date, only some sections are proclaimed, and we are still far away from having the legislation in place. We have seen also in the past 6 months that they've been playing musical chairs in the cabinet room. We have had 4 ministers in the Ministry of Housing in less than 3 years. One minister lasted 48 hours, only to be beaten by another who lasted a few hours as a result of new information. And then the Prime Minister, having acted for quite some time as Minister of Public Admin and Communications, returned to a ministry from which he had been fired by the former Prime Minister. Many doubt about the capacity for functioning in the substantive office, and now the member Diego Martin West assumes the task and duties of housing and urban development. You know, a prominent trade union leader, former trade union comrade, described the Prime Minister, what was it, lazy or something like that? These are people they march arm in arm with. And now, returning for a second stint at housing, the Prime Minister tells the country about a $9 billion investment in the sector. When asked again today about where is the source, what is the source of funding?
People money.
Again, yes. The response was far from, giving comfort as to where this is going to come from. Where will this $9 billion come from? Clearly, it will be by borrowing, because we haven't seen any of the much touted 3P model, the private partnership, public partnership model, not a single housing unit in 3 years. This is a weight on an already crushing debt burden, $9 billion for generations to come. Now, the minister spent some time telling us about things that he had spoken. Again, I said same old from budgets before about the NIL. I think the name is now slightly changed from what is in the budget statement, that you take the assets of CLICO and others, you create this fund, and you sell the assets. And then tells us this is changing the paradigm onto a new pathway of sustainable development. These things that you're going to sell belong to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And when you sell them, that is a one-off revenue receipt. When you sell those assets, that's one time, it's gone. So the question will then be, what use are you going to put revenue gain from these one-time sales, asset sales? What is the use you will put it to? We haven't heard the minister share that with us. All it is, we're booming. We're going to get billions from the sale of the CLICO assets, but no plan, no indication as to how you will use that to grow the non-energy sector, how you will use that to create jobs. Nothing of the sort. Just give me. And I'm reminded again of Colm, let me get this money in my hands. And as we continue to listen, we have seen a very heartless approach by the HDC, which is now headed by Diego Martin West, and I think his government partner is also there, if I'm not mistaken. Because we see hard-working, innocent, poor people, working people, lined up for eviction. And many of them have paid all their rental obligations. Please have a heart. Stop this policy of evicting them. If they have fully paid off their rents, if they cannot, for any reason, convert rent to a mortgage arrangement, they're paying up their rent, then they must be allowed to continue in this belt-tightening time that you had provided for them over the last few years. And Madam Speaker, I said, when I started, the same old. If you look at every sector, every promise, from their manifesto coming down to their repeated budget promises, and you look for one thing they have delivered upon that they had promised, the only thing you will find is taxes. You will find no other thing that they have done. Nothing. And so after spending more than $110 billion, let's remember that, with nothing to show, nothing tangible to show, people are beginning to understand the very real consequences of electing.
Madam Speaker, 53(1)F, please.
Honorable members, I am having some difficulty. I'm really having some difficulty. Okay, and the murmur is becoming uncontrollable. So I'll ask all members. I think members have pointed out how low the ceilings are here, and therefore to adjust their volumes accordingly. Member for Superior.
Thank you again, Madam. Thank you. So, $110 billion spent, midterm, mid-year, whatever it is. There's very little tangible that we can see. And so I think people are believing and beginning to understand the real consequences of electing those on the other side without a plan to govern Trinidad and Tobago. And the consequences are very clear. Rampant, unchecked crime. If you look at the headlines of the newspapers yesterday and today, yesterday as well, and my condolences go out to these people. The young boy was killed on his birthday. The young boy was killed on his birthday. He attends his school, the Shiva Boys School in my constituency, and that he has done exceedingly well in football. Gunned down on his birthday for what he was talking to a girl. That is what is alleged. Madam, and if you look at all the headlines, war in the West, gangs blamed as 8 killed in 1 week. Car thieves running rampant. These are some of the headlines. Granny begs police to find grandchildren, and it goes on. These headlines are the screaming headlines, rampant crime. A crashed economy, and I'll share a little in terms of the state of the economy in a moment, madam. Hospitals remain closed. Doctors are unemployed. People are ill. Schools remain incomplete. Roads in disrepair. We are coming into the wet season, and very little has been done to clear the waterways and so on. And that is where we are today. I wonder, as I spoke of broken promises by those on the other side, if the minister will remember what he told this parliament in his budget statement 2016. He promised that they will bring the government finances into approximate balance by fiscal year 2018.
Really?
Those are his words in
His
there.
words?
It's in the budget statement.
I don't believe
It's in the budget statement.
That was just an
That he will
expectation.
come. And today he comes back to tell us we are in 2018, and he's telling us he's going to get all these one-off sale monies and so on. But we are going to still have a deficit, reduced perhaps, but a deficit. But fiscal he had planned, and therefore his plan, he failed. He failed in his promise to the Parliament that he would bring the balance, approximate balance, to the Parliament. And more, madam, what is the reality we face here now? Let us look at some of the things they promised us. And there was an old saying, and some of us remember it, PNM means promises never materialize. The recovery the minister is promising will come, madam. It will come, but it will not be under that administration. Because they do not have the capacity it takes to put the country back on to growth and development. I'll spend, as I come to the another part of what I need to say, of some of the things I think we could do. And they are very simple things with what you call low-hanging fruit. So in this mid-year review, at the midterm mark, they have failed to deliver, as I say, on any single big-ticket item. In fact, they have even failed to start most of these big-ticket items. And when you heard the minister speaking about nothing as we have done, it was all, we will, it will happen, it will come. It's like, listen, stay tuned, come into a cinema near you. Come into a cinema near you. Yes, hold on. And what? Why are you so hurry? Why they asked us that? Why are we so hurry? Well, we are hurry because people are suffering in this country. Almost 3 years gone, and the economy is on crash. And you turn the corner. You tell us you're turning the corner, but when you turn the corner, you see the cliff in front of you. That we are going down that cliff. We are going down. I see it clearly. You can see clearly. That's where we are heading, unless we see the plans and the policies. So here we are. Not one of these big-ticket items. Looking at a track record, promise after promise, with nothing done. Instead of delivery, we got destruction. They promised a port in Togo. Instead, they crashed the sea bridge. They promised an improved water taxi service. They crashed that too. They promised to implement a national drainage plan. Haven't seen it, heard it, but more flood after flood. And people can't benefit. Promise after promise, billions, and yet promises never materialize. In their 2016 budget, they talked about addressing shortage of medical personnel immediately. There are hundreds of doctors trained, highly trained, who up to today can't get a job. Hospitals remaining closed. 200. In their manifesto, they promised to ensure that the gate system, created in 2004, remains relevant, easily accessible, available to all who need it. What did they actually do? Cut the gate funding. The minister came today to continue their proven false narrative, to make even more promises that there will be no delivery on. So here we are to review another bankrupt, empty budget or part budget or midterm review. Let's talk a bit about the crashed economy, madam. Is there economic recovery as government would want us to believe? Here's what we are facing on the economic front. State of the economy. Trinidad and Tobago's energy-based economy contracted for the second consecutive year in 2017, despite a pickup in natural gas production. New natural gas output from the Juniper field, which was commissioned third quarter 2017, made more gas available to midstream, downstream energy companies, and therefore improving natural gas liquids, LNG, and petrochemicals. Yes, so there has been a tick up there. What this means is that government will now benefit from the additional revenue from that national natural gas production, as we said before, as a work done under the partnership. However, the mismanagement of state-owned Petrotrin lies squarely at the feet of this government. They have facilitated corrupt practices which has been pervaded over the once prosperous refinery. We all recall the fake oil scandal causing a hemorrhage of close to $100 million. Person admitted to be a bestie of the member for Diego Martin West. The negative spillovers from the energy sector, combined with a severe toll on business confidence, drove a further decline in non-energy activity in 2017, with contractions across major sectors such as construction, manufacturing, and distribution. Madam, it shows where government is unable to inspire confidence in the business sector, there will be a decline, manufacturing, construction, and that will account also for low job creation and high unemployment. As a review of the economy, state of the economy, real GDP, as measured by the CSO, is estimated to have declined 2.3% in 17 compared to a decline of 6% in 16. Conditions worsened in the labor market. The latest labor market information from CSO show that the number of persons without jobs increased by 9,600 to 36,100 without jobs between 15 and 17. So to talk of the rate is one thing. To talk about people, you see, in this world, it is about people. It's not just about the numbers. It's not just about a 1% growth outlook or a 0.2%. It is about the people. It's people who matter the most. So when it is by 15 and 17, we are now having, as reported by CSO stats, over 36,000 people between 15 and 17 without jobs, madam. So that labor market conditions have worsened. Information on retrenchment from the Ministry of Labour indicates some 2,421 persons were retrenched between 16 and 17. But that's a curious situation because they are far more than that. Because of the law and the way the law is framed, you have to report if more than 5 persons are fired. But there are many places where individuals have been fired, losing their jobs. And so, while we paint a rosy picture of recovery, people are home. They're wondering where is the recovery for them and in their pockets and in their wallets. Weak non-energy activity has restrained domestic inflation. The minister spoke a lot about beating his chest and how great thou art about low inflation. Lowest rate on record, madam, in spite of a pickup in food inflation in the later months and so on. The inflation effect of reintroducing VAT on previously exempt items in early 16 has been cancelled out almost 1 year later in February 2017. Core inflation was contained in spite of upward pressure from higher transport costs as a result of the reduction of energy subsidies. But so why then do we have this low inflation? The finance minister boasts we have it because, first of all, it's his job. That's what he did. He caused it. He made that miracle happen. With low inflation, less than 2%, because of his management of the economy. Madam, that is totally false. In fact, it is the opposite. Because of mismanagement of the economy, we have this exceedingly low inflation rate. Low inflation is simply lower demand for goods and services brought on by lower levels of government spending and lower levels of domestic investment. In fact, Standard & Poor's said that the low inflation rate was due to low demand, and they expect it to average just over 3% over the forecast horizon. Madam, less money chasing the same amount of goods leads to low inflation. The subdued inflation performance raises 2 issues. This subdued inflation performance. One, the retail prices index, which the CSO uses to measure inflation, is based on a basket of goods from 2008 to 2009. Household survey 10 years ago. This is what the RPI, retail price index, is being used to measure the basket today. This means a basket of goods and the relevant weights are not representative of the more recent purchasing habits of the typical consumer. Second, if measured inflation continues to slow down, the economy could enter into deflation, both falling non-energy output and prices. Now, how do we then get out of a deflationary spiral, Madam Speaker? It's a serious issue. It would require massive fiscal stimulus, for which the government does not have sufficient fiscal space without raising public debt even more. So it is not about beating your chest to boast about it. This is a serious matter. This means that the brunt of government austerity measures were borne by the everyday citizens as reduction in transfers and subsidies and so on affected the disposable income, living standards of the working class, the middle class, the poor, and the marginalized. Madam Speaker, the construction sector has crashed. If you go and look at the available data, look at cement sales, look at car sales, all down. You look at all the areas and you will see from the RPI and the volume of matters in the construction sector being sold that the construction sector has gone into tailspin or has crashed. And then there is, I was saying we are looking at the state of the economy, the forex issue. Madam, I really think I am being disturbed from the other side.
The member for Superior, I can hear the strain in her voice to overcome the I'd ask members again for the last time to please contain the crosstalk. Member for Superior.
Thank you again, Madam. I turn now to a very, very disturbing issue, that is the issue of forex. That forex issue, where there's access or lack of access, has in fact crippled the private sector. The central bank has depreciated secretly, I would say, the TT dollar by 6.5% against the US dollar since September 2015. But this has done very little to help with the chronic foreign exchange shortages. Market participants' university report shortages remain severe, fueling a thriving black market for Forex. Business relations with suppliers, foreign, are being damaged because of difficulties in sourcing US dollars for trade payments. The government has paralyzed smaller businesses. Some of them have been plunged into crisis. They have no access to Forex to pay for their goods and raw materials. It is clear that the policy of this government is in the big people and the big businesses as those who have been able to access Forex. The decline in revenue in the energy sector led to the shortfall partly to the Forex. The minister is aware of it. What has been done, we have been told Exim Bank is going to see it. We'll have to believe it when that happens and when we see it. I am aware that to even get $100 US from a bank, madam, you have to go and line up. Sometimes you wait for days and beg. Nothing is happening. So if you want to travel, you have to go to the bank a few times. You have to go to your ticket. We are back to those days, you know. I want you to remember those days. We are back to those days. Some of you may be too young to remember those days. But those of you who are not so young like me will remember pressure and the controls. So, fiscal performance continued to deteriorate, madam. Fiscal 16-17. The overall fiscal deficit under the government widened sharply to 12.6 billion, 8.5% of GDP, from 8 billion, 5.3% of GDP in the previous year. That deterioration in fiscal performance was due to lower than budgeted receipts of revenue. And it was with respect to those extraordinary receipts from the sale of the CL financial assets, the same one we have been told, look, we'll get big lump sums from them. So they said we're going to make X, then they did not get anywhere close to that. What's worse is that they promised 2 years ago, as I told you, they will balance the finances this fiscal year in his budget, as I quoted before. Yet another broken promise. So while government spending fell in fiscal 17 due to cuts on spending on goods and services, reduced fuel subsidies, debt servicing increased because of rising public debt. Interest payments consume 12.5% of current revenue in fiscal 17, compared with 5.5% of current revenue just 3 years ago. Reduced spending on the PSIP, again, very little fiscal stimulus to already debilitated non-energy sector. So I want to turn to that issue of the public debt because of the burden that it is being placed on our citizens. The same March 2018 bulletin from the central bank revealed that interest payments rose to 642.5 million from 541 million in the first quarter 17-18, fiscal 18, owing to a larger stock of foreign and domestic debt. The issue of the rapid growth in borrowings by the minister remains great cause for alarm. In 2015, borrowings represented I'm hearing whispers across it's going down, but we still have to debate the debt on the borrowings. Did you ever read it, girl? That's not going down. That is going to be there to be paid for generations to come at the rate you're going. The borrowings represented, Mr. Speaker, and the piece of paper. Madam Speaker, the Auditor General's Report 2017, which gives us end fiscal 17, revealed the shocking news that in the last 2 years alone, government borrowings have totaled $24.4 billion. 24.4 in 2 years. This 2-year total, Madam Speaker, this 2-year total is 1.3 times higher than the total borrowings of the partnership government for 5 years. Wow. 5 years. And this can be found in the Auditor General's report, which was laid right here in the Parliament on Friday. Under this minister's version of good fiscal management, The figure has increased by more than 300% to 22.61%, meaning in 2017 it would have taken more than 1 in 5 of all government revenue to repay borrowings for that year. So don't tell me you're going to stop borrowing. You will have to repay all this public debt. What does that do then? What does that huge debt mean? We are at a very dangerous point. The central bank, March 2018, which is the most recent data we have, tells us that total public sector debt amounted to $120.9 billion, which is 77.5% of GDP in December 2017. Net or open market operations, public sector debt increased to $96.2 billion, 61.6% of GDP, up from $93.8 billion in September 17. So between September 17 and December 17, which is the first quarter of this fiscal year, this is what took place. So we are at a very dangerous point. As beyond 60% debt to GDP, low revenue prospects, any further shock to the economy may result in debt levels that are so high that the state may have to default at worst or restructure at best. But even that has this problem. The former means bankruptcy and economic collapse with all the ills associated with that. I'm speaking of the high level of public debt.
Madam Speaker, 53-1. Yes.
Okay, so members, again,
yes.
I think we consider this important. Every member will have an opportunity to join the debate. I realize it might be at the time of the day, some of us might be a bit unsettled, but please maintain your decorum, your volumes. Member for Superior.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You see, the truth offends. The truth offends. They don't want to hear it. So that I'm saying we're at a dangerous point as beyond 60% of debt to GDP. That's where we are. As revealed in the Central Bank Economic Report, March 2018, madam, just a month or two ago. Those are the facts, stubborn facts. And what it means then, at that state, bankruptcy, oh please, with the Minister of Finance, he had his time. You are completely offensive. You're worse than Comedy Central, we just laugh at you.
Members, I think we all consider this debate seriously. The member in moving also wanted all attention because he wanted to get his message across, not just to us, but to the members of the national community. I would hope we would all give similar regard and respect to the member for Superior. Please continue.
Thank you very much, madam. So what happens then? We can restructure, as is what will have to happen with the Petrotin debt, the very large debt there incurred under a former P&M administration. We can restructure, debt restructuring, or we can go into economic collapse. Those things are real possibilities on the horizon. The latter action of debt, as I say, restructuring, may or could lead us back to the arms or the jaws of the IMF. Together with the high rates of external debt, privatization of enterprises control commanded heights of the economy and hard times for a generation or more. This could result in a situation, Madam Speaker, in national income accounting that is known as debt overhang. This is a scenario where debt is so high that the state cannot easily borrow more funds, and if so, would find it very difficult to repay. The recent declarations given by Standard & Poor's and the IMF foretell very similar concerns. My colleagues will pick it up. Time does not permit me to go into the quotations out of that. So, foreign exchange reserve, as we look at the state of the economy, foreign exchange reserve, our external position continues to worsen. The recovery comes against the so-called recovery backdrop of collapsing foreign reserves. And there has not been a single new revenue generation initiative by that government. Not a single revenue generation project, initiative, or any particular enterprise designed to generate much needed foreign exchange. apart from loans, of course, apart from borrowings from CAF and so on. According to the central bank data, net official foreign reserves have virtually collapsed from US $10.46 billion when we left office in 2015 to now $7.99 billion in March of 2018. It means we have dropped from 11.9 months in the import cover under the government I led, has dropped from 11.9 to 9 months under this minister. What the figures don't show, however, is also that the government took out the monies from the HSF. I think it was, anyway, 2 withdrawals from the HSF of US $626 million. So increasing demand, that's again foreign exchange. Increasing demands on foreign exchange to repay debt will continue to pose a challenge in the very near future. Again, from the way the minister spoke about that HSF and blamed everybody who said there will be problems if they took the money, it seems that he's planning to go back into the HSF again to take more money. There is nothing that remotely suggests in all of this that this government has properly managed the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Moody's and Standard & Poor's downgraded Trinidad and Tobago's sovereign credit rating. Moody's downgrade was to a sub-investment grade, which is really what they call junk grade of BA1. S&P's rating is still an investment grade of BBB+, so it's still an investment grade. And these downgrades, from reading the narrative in the various reports, triggered by insufficient policy response by the government to offset the impact of low energy prices on government revenues, a steady increase in public debt, declining energy production coupled with limited energy investment projects. And please don't expect us to believe that when you blame Franklin Kahn, it means that all is well and merry. It was Minister Franklin Kahn's fault that he sent the wrong data. You think the IMF and the Moody's and these people born yesterday? You think they're not looking, they're not reading and seeing all the signs, they're lined up, they're like pins in a row just waiting to be bowled over? The signs are there. You want to take 1 month's January, 1 month out of how much has gone already in the fiscal year, and say, hey, when we make so much money in that month, and maybe February. They do these things on averages. They don't do it on 1 month. So Mr. Franklin Kahn was wrong. He took the blame. He was a fall guy. But the Moody's and Poor, I am more inclined to believe them and Standard and Poor than to believe this minister. These downgrades mean that our credit worthiness is falling, making it more expensive for the country to borrow, either locally or internationally, and these downgrades mean that international institutions view our government's economic management as too weak to tackle the country's challenges. And again, over the next 6 to 12 months, if government is unable to convince Standard & Poor that its economic policy responses will help to stabilize public debt, then S&P will downgrade Trinidad and Tobago to junk status. But Mr. has not told us anything about how he's going to do that. All he's telling us is how to sell things, sell the fridge and the stove from the wardrobe from the house, and make capital revenue once more. Finally, madam, I need to spend a few minutes on the blame game. From their very first day in office, public relations slogan, blame Kamla, blame them, blame everybody, blame the police, blame the foreign advisories, international, blame the United Nations, blame game. It was our thesis that has been presented in the public domain. So they set out, and I'll talk to you about Vestige and Elite and Art Collins. So they set out to convince the population that the country was running on smoke, that we didn't leave anything. Minister of Finance talked about the overdraft. Minister of Finance, what is your overdraft today? Yes, what is your overdraft today? Your overdraft today is outside the limit permitted by law. And I ask you to go and look at it. The law permits Exchequer Act and the Central Bank Act. No, you could respond after. The Central Bank Act and the Exchequer Act, madam, talks of how this is to be calculated. And it is 15% of revenue. Today, For 2016-17 fiscal, your overdraft here, 7 billion. 10 billion is your overdraft.
Wow.
And the 15% of revenue is 7 billion. But you came last year, if you remember, late to increase the margins. You increased the margins from 15% of revenue to 17%. So look, don't be hypocritical. You maxed out the overdraft, you maxed out the overdraft. I'll tell you this, government's revenue in our first year in office, we were 47.5 million. Again, all of that is in the Auditor General's report laid here in Parliament on Friday. Do you know what was the revenue received by that government in its first year? It was more than we received.
Speaker 53, 1F, please. My colleague only has a few minutes remaining.
Oh, please.
Now, both sides. As I say, I am somewhat sympathetic. I understand the time is 12:35, and members may be a bit unsettled. But we continue with the business of the day. Please continue.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. First year in office, we were 47.5 billion. The first year in office with that government, $60.3 billion. Wow. Revenue. So when they're telling you about we maxed out and they had no money and tightening your belt, we had less revenue in our first year. Does that sound like a country that was bankrupt when we left office in 2015? In their first year in office, that government collected $12.8 billion more in revenue than we did in our first year. But that wasn't enough. The minister had a plan, you see. He had to suffer people, tax everybody, reduce budgets from every ministry, and all the while repeating ad nauseum. They max out, they thief out, they do everything, they bankrupt the country. But yet you had $60 billion in revenue. And all the while, in the first 3 years, I will tell you, again, those reports laid here, God is good, you know, so all those reports came just in time before this debate. Right. In the first 3 years of the government island, without introducing a single new tax, not one new tax, total government revenue was $153.8 billion. Do you know how much it was to them? In the first 3 years of this government, and the estimate for 2018, which we got, budget 2018, government revenue would have been $153.84 billion. And then the question comes now. They received over $750 million more than our party got, our government got, when we were in government over the same 3-year time frame. So the question, you know, I remember a former prime minister say, where the money gone? Where that money gone? You had the money to spend, but you fooled the people so you could come near the election now. Yes. We are booming. We turn the corner. Suffering people, tighten your belt, no medication, no CDAP, no laptop, cut. That's all that went on. No children's life fund. And so they had more revenues to spend, but it was quite the opposite. And then it comes to expenditure. Well, then you should have had more to spend. If there was no teeth in, why did you spend the money? Why did you not spend for the benefit of the poor and the working poor in this country? Why it is you would allow a child to die rather than give them for life for surgery? Why did you not spend the money? Because you had it. In our first 3 years, we spent $169 billion. In their 3 years, they spent $162 billion. So they had it. What did they do with it? What do you have to show for it? What can you point to as having been done by your government? And so those are my final words, madam. What does the figure mean? They had more revenue. They chose to spend less. There's a difference of $2.3 billion per year between what we spend, what they spend. What does it mean? They spent $4.6 per day per citizen, less than the price of a doubles when you take the expenditures. The minister would have you believe he worked so hard to reduce expenditure and manage and so on. All of that was to come today to beat his chest and say, booming, around the corner. We are great. How great am I? There is no paradox, Madam Speaker. This government is a big people government, you know. I always said it. So where that money went, instead of helping small people out there, all these people losing their jobs, evicting people out of their HEC homes and so on, no. That was not important. Madam Speaker, there's a deficit which my other colleagues will deal with, and they will deal with other areas of details with respect to ministries. I just want to close. Some of the things, are very few, in the 2 minutes I may have. Probably 8 minutes, thank you. Well, then fine, I'll take my time. Here we are. What the government should focus on. The first thing, I know 43, 9, 3, 4.
Yeah, injury time.
Up at 12:43. Please don't be misguided. 12:43.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I think everyone in the country, what matters most to us are our children. Okay? I don't think anyone would deny that. What matters most, what we work for, what we do, it is for children. And I'm sure it pains us every time. I'm sure St. Joseph feels it likewise, that when the children come, they're told they don't qualify for treatment from the Life Fund. I want to make a suggestion. I would like Minister and the government to take immediate steps to review and amend the Children's Life Fund. To where we've seen the shortcomings now with the use of it, and let's see if we can get these children the care and health care they need. And so in all of this, what to do? All is not lost. There is hope. Our economy can be fixed. We can regain fiscal balance. We can stabilize public debt. We can stop the bleeding of official reserves. We can bring our economy back on a pathway to growth. The first critical step is to restore confidence and rebuild trust. This government from day one preached doom and gloom, so that investor confidence has been eroded. And so, to build that confidence and restore trust, the government must come up with a credible medium-term economic plan, communicate the milestones along the way on that plan, and act in implementing it decisively. Secondly, government should stop imposing all these taxes on the citizens. This is not generating revenue. Look at your own revenue numbers that have come in. All these taxes, and the tax revenue is down. It's not up. Oh, and by the way, the minister told us we wouldn't get any tax from the oil companies and so on for 7 years. It's in your budget statement. Today he's coming and boasting about collecting taxes from the oil companies. Well, what to believe? Which one is the truth? So, do not keep bringing these taxes. It has the opposite effect. I've used the example of the United States of America, where they brought their taxes down and employment is going up, investment is going up. Thirdly, we must stop trying to secretly depreciate the dollar. And finally, we should consider increasing interest rates, because that will prevent, to an extent, capital flight. It will allow people to keep their money, put in the banks, raise the interest rate. It can help us to encourage savings. And that is a consideration, again, in the United States, where they are considering. So that's the end of that. As I have 1 second, madam, I say, you see what? You are incapable. Your time is up. Your time of ruling this country without humility, without humanity, without incompetence, your time of tyranny is up. Call election.
Member for Port of Spain. Member for Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as a taxpayer,
return the truth
of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular as a taxpayer who paid significant amounts of tax between the years of 2010 and 2015, I can see where our tax-paying money went by that administration paying the likes of Cambridge Analytica and others to present false news. And to prevent false news and to do what has become very familiar by political parties that are in a sense of great desperation, to just throw things out there and hope that it will stick. To bring this back to a level of sanity, because that is what the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago deserve, and to bring it back and to ground it as to what is actually happening in Trinidad and Tobago, and not what is wished upon the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and not the type of destructive fake news that is being spewed on the people of Trinidad and Tobago by what was quite interesting, a pre-prepared speech, a speech that as soon as the Honorable Minister of Finance sat down was there, and we're reading speeches. A speech I understand that was prepared by Doppy, a speech prepared by Doppy that used absolutely incorrect facts, and I will point a few of those facts out before we tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago what this government has done and why they made the right decision on the 7th of September 2015 in electing a PNM government. And perhaps I could start, Madam Speaker. It was very interesting to hear the Honourable Leader of the Opposition talk about forex leakage and the disappearance of foreign exchange. The first point to be made is Trinidad and Tobago does not print United States dollars or pounds sterling. Quite interestingly, I'll come to the pound sterling shortly, Madam Speaker. Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the people of Trinidad and Tobago only earn foreign exchange from the oil and gas, or the majority of it is earned from the oil and gas industry and the payment of taxes and royalties. I hear the member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker.
The member for Naparima.
48-4. I will not be called Dr.
Member for Laventille West, please. Members, all members on both sides. Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. If you could just withdraw that statement. I also want to caution all members. At 12:46, maybe there's something happening with our sugar levels. Let's take that into consideration. And I advise all members to take caution. Please do the honorable.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I withdraw the use of the word Doppy with reference to the member for Naparima.
Member for Princess Town, I just advised about our sugar levels. I'll excuse all of that on the basis of our sugar levels. Please get it under control. Member for Pontepel, as the whip, I expect you know better.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. They say empty barrels make the most noise, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, starting with...
I'd like us to get back on even keel. Please withdraw that comment. Continue with your valuable contribution.
Withdrawn, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, back to the issue of foreign exchange, and in particular, the leakage of foreign exchange. Madam Speaker, it's quite interesting that the member for Siparia was telling us about the leakage of foreign exchange. But the population of Trinidad and Tobago should know that out of the office of the Prime Minister, and in particular during the months of August and September 2015, there seems to be quite a lot of leakage of foreign exchange, and in particular pound sterling in that office, going from the office of Prime Minister to different places abroad. Pound sterling leaking out of the office of the Prime Minister in August and September 2015.
Before the election.
The next thing we'd like to talk about, I found it very interesting. I was reading an article in today's Newsday, Madam Speaker, and it talks about, was it a loan or campaign financing? And involving a person by the name of Krishna Lala and another person by the name of Jack Warner. We're talking about leakage of foreign exchange. In particular, there was leakage of foreign exchange, millions of United States dollars being leaked out of Trinidad and Tobago by persons to accounts in the British Virgin Islands and then making its way to Panama. I saw video conferencing taking place from Panama in this particular matter. So I was wondering, when there was this discussion about debt repayment and loan repayments, I was wondering if that is what they were referring to, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, just to bring it back now, foreign exchange is earned from oil and gas. Once again, Madam Speaker, they like to mislead, and foreign exchange is earned from oil and gas. The Honourable Minister of Finance started his presentation this morning by reminding the country this is factual, this is not fiction or false news, spinning of wheels here, there, or anywhere. Factually, in 2014, Trinidad and Tobago earned over $20 billion in oil and gas revenue. In the year 2014, they earned over $20 billion in oil and gas revenue. In 2016, Madam Speaker, that figure dropped to below $1 billion, meaning those are facts, Madam Speaker. So no matter how they have pre-prepared speeches and they come here and they try to mislead the population, the facts speak for themselves. Madam Speaker, the energy industry. Unfortunately, just before the election, at the then leader of the opposition's office, we were being informed that the energy sector was not all that it was being made out to be in the years 2010 and 2015. And in particular, there was a lot of desperation and a lot of concern about curtailment issues taking place in the energy sector. No matter what noise is made, no matter what former ministers go and find themselves on television, on radio, elsewhere, and try to explain to the population what it is they did and did not do, the facts speak for themselves. Madam Speaker, the energy industry, and in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, we have oil and we have gas. Just to deal with oil very briefly, we're dealing with this massive entity called Petrotrin. Again, between the years 2010 and 2015, absolutely nothing was done with Petrotrin to make it a more manageable entity, make it a more profitable entity, to reduce its debt, to reduce its expenditure. This government, recognizing immediately upon assumption into office the importance of Petrotrin, and in particular the importance that Petrotrin plays in our sovereign risk and in all faculties of Trinidad and Tobago, immediately set about to appoint a specific committee under the former permanent secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Selwyn Lashley, to go in and to assess Petrotrin. As an all-embracing composition of that team, we even had members of the union participating on it. They came back to the government, to the Cabinet Subcommittee on Energy, and told us, look, these are the areas you need to focus on. This is what you need to do to address Petrotrin. The government then took the decision to appoint a very specific board, a board that has the financial capabilities, the capabilities in oil production, in refining, etc., put them to work. And very shortly, that board would report to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular through the Joint Select Committee on Energy, and tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago what is going on with respect to the reconstitution and rebuilding of Petrotrin to make it a viable entity. That is not old talk, that is not false news. It is a fact, and it will be presented to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. So it now comes to the gas side of Trinidad and Tobago. And when we came in, Madam Speaker, what the population should be aware of is gas contracts, both from upstream, and upstream means those who go into the ground and produce the gas molecules and bring it up for sale, both to Atlantic LNG and the rest of the downstream industry in Point Lisas. Those are the contracts for upstream. You have BP, EOG, Shell, and BHP as the major players. And on the downstream, you have a host of ammonia, urea, and other producers in methanol, etc. Those contracts are very complex contracts, and any government doing what is best for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular trying to attain the best revenue levels of Trinidad and Tobago, would negotiate those contracts at a time when they are not close to expiry or have not expired. So you have a very stable playing field and a very stable table upon which to bargain and negotiate. What did we find? Immediately upon assumption into office, we had persons coming to us to say the former government had agreed something called CGCL, and in particular to provide gas to CGCL by taking it away from those who had invested in Trinidad and Tobago for the last few decades. They introduced something called a greenfield gas policy. The citizens of Trinidad and Tobago were never told of the introduction of this greenfield policy. What it immediately meant is that persons would have claims against the government and NGC for being treated differently and for being treated in a manner that was not positive to them. We looked at the CGCL contract and realized that the public servants had put in writing, in red ink pen, and were being pressured, and I remind the country, they were being pressured on the day of elections of 7th of September 2015 to give the final sign-off. That is the Attorney General's opinion. The public servants, Mr. Deputy Speaker, had said in writing, and saw it fit to put it in red writing, there were certain elements of this deal that were not beneficial to Trinidad and Tobago and would actually equate to claims being made against Trinidad and Tobago. We immediately began to renegotiate that deal, and in fact, what was interesting, Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I remember correctly, the then Minister of Finance had actually told the then Minister of Energy in writing that some of these conditions were not going to be favorable to Trinidad and Tobago. The then Minister of Energy ignored that and was trying to force the deal to be finally consummated through the Office of the Attorney General on the day of elections, the 7th of September 2015. This government took the difficult decision, went to the government of Japan, the Japanese JBIC Bank, and to the Mitsubishi Group, and we thank them here today, because unlike what those on the other side like to say, and all the naysayers in saying you can't go and renegotiate contracts, it will run persons from Trinidad and Tobago, no international foreign investment will come here, we have experienced the exact opposite. The Standing Committee on Energy sent a small team, led by myself. We went to Japan, we sat down with Mitsubishi, we sat down with the government of Japan, and we renegotiated a deal that is now beneficial to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and leads to us eradicating billions of dollars in claims. That was done immediately. The next issue we faced was the issue of curtailment of gas. All along we were being told there was maintenance taking place. Not true. Not true. The upstreamers had gas contracts expiring. NGC and the upstreamers, BP and EOG, had locked horns. It was not moving anywhere. If that had continued, Mr. Speaker, it would have meant the complete collapse of the gas-based industry in Trinidad and Tobago, and all of the plants on Point Lisas, some who at that time had already filed billions of dollars of claims against the NGC, would have collapsed and had to leave because there was no gas contract for Trinidad and Tobago beyond a certain point. The government then had done nothing. They had not renegotiated a single upstream gas contract. They had not renegotiated a single downstream contract. In fact, downstream contracts had expired since 2013 and 2014, and those on the other side were rolling them over month by month and not participating in the renegotiation. What was interesting, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is this was NGC. We have stood here in Parliament, we've stood outside of Parliament. We know between the years 2010 and 2015, NGC was bled of $12 to $14 billion in cash. So they were only focused on how to spend money. We know where some of that money was spent, on recreational grounds, in certain constituencies at cost that it should have been $2 million, they spent $12 million. So rather than focus, Mr. Deputy Speaker, rather than focus on the renegotiation of downstream contracts and ensuring that NGC had upstream gas, I'm hearing a lot of noise, but I'm trying to ignore it, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let the people of Trinidad and Tobago know that is what we faced.
Members, please, I would like to hear the member in silence. Proceed.
So on the energy side, Mr. Deputy Speaker, immediately this government set about renegotiating and negotiating contracts with both the upstream and the downstream. We've heard a lot of noise. I heard the Honourable Member for Siparia ask, what is it that the Honourable Prime Minister, the member for Diego Martin West, what has he come back with from these trips? That trip in Houston of last year and in March of last year, we were stuck. And if that was not unstuck, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they on that side had placed this country in a position where we would have had no future gas supply for downstream industry beyond 2018. The Prime Minister went, led a very small team. We had all of the technocrats on the line with us, and we're happy to say once again that we secured gas supply at prices from 2019 going forward into the future, which then allowed this country to continue in discussions with downstream. Again, they painted us into a position, into corners with the downstream industry. The whole economics of gas supply has changed. So we are now called upon to negotiate with all of these downstreamers. And we had to do that in very difficult circumstances, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So again, what have we achieved? We have achieved upstream gas contracts, gas prices and gas supply going forward from 2019 into the future. On the downstream side, for the first time, something that they could not achieve for 5 years, we have achieved the settling of billions of dollars in claims, and we have also achieved the signing of new contracts in the downstream industry. Let it be said that those on the other side cost this country billions of dollars in claims because of their lack of effort, their lack of diligence, their lack of responsibility and duty. But what they were good at was spending the money, spending the $12 billion at NGC rather than making sure they weren't put into a claims position, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We heard briefly from the member for Diego Martin Northeast talk about gas production. I actually think his figures are quite conservative, Mr. Deputy Speaker. He talked about us getting back up to 3.7, 3.9 at the end of this year. I actually think we will cross 4 billion TCF at the end of this year because there are a number of projects that are going on that we will hear about very shortly. Again, those projects are taking place and secured because of the relationship that this government, at the level of the Office of the Prime Minister, have taken the time to rebuild, and I use that language very carefully, to rebuild and to ensure that there is a future energy in industry and sector in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the issue of CLF and CLICO. I think it's worthwhile reminding the population about CLF and CLICO. In 2009, it was felt by the then government that they needed to intervene and bail out CLF and CLICO because of the effect it would have on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Very shortly thereafter, that government was removed from office. You had a government there from 2010 to 2015, 5 years and 3 months. And up to this day, you had 2 ministers of finance under that government say they fixed CLF and CLICO. I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to understand something. It was during that period of time, the debt owed to the taxpayers and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago by the CLF and CLICO group was over $23 billion, and not a single shred of security was provided over the assets. What that means, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we have seen now the evidence that the UNC-led government was advised by the lawyers and advised by the financial advisors, they should have securitized that debt of $23 billion. They did absolutely nothing about it. What that means, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, is that we as taxpayers were owed $23 billion by two private companies in the majority, and we did not have anything covering that debt. We did not have any mortgage, we did not have any debenture, we had nothing. The shareholders continued to not provide security to us, the taxpayers. So at any point in time, they could have launched an action, taken back their assets, and I'll come to that. So the important point is, for 5 years, 3 months, they were advised securitize the debt, which simply means get them to agree that we can hold the assets for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They did nothing about it. They did absolutely nothing about it. When we came in as a government, immediately the shareholders set about trying to regain their assets, and through I don't want to say surreptitious ways, without paying back the debt. They wanted us, the custodians of the taxpayers' money, to just hand the assets back to them. And you know what hurt, Mr. Deputy Speaker? The two former ministers who were actually at the table when intervention decision was taken place, then rushed to advise the shareholders how to take these assets back from the people of Trinidad and Tobago without repaying a cent to Trinidad and Tobago. So what did we have to do then, Mr. Deputy Speaker? This government had the political will and had...
Silence.
This political administration had the will, the wherewithal, the intellect, maybe that is what was lacking, as well as the fortitude to take on the shareholders. The shareholders were about to appoint 2 new directors. They would have more directors than the government's directors. That government refused, point blank refused to secure the $23 billion owed to Trinidad and Tobago. We were being told that they would not provide that security, they would not provide the piece of paper, and we fought it, and we went to court. All the senior counsel they had in their cabinet, all the senior counsel they gave themselves and otherwise, they did not have the intellect or the fortitude to go to court and to liquidate CLF, and this government did that.
They said we couldn't do it.
And it was being said by them.
Members, I will not tolerate, member for Siparia,
Cannot help it.
Yes, sir.
I will not tolerate the outbursts across the floor. Please, proceed.
Very much. Mr. Deputy.
Member, hold on. Naparima, please. Didn't ask for feedback.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I know it pains them, because, Deputy Speaker, this is the first government, the first administration that had the will and perhaps the moral authority to protect the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why today we continue to recover the billions of dollars owed to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago without the threat of the shareholders taking it from us. And when we went into court, the debt at that time was between $15 and $17 billion. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was unsecured. And we continue to recover it from the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They also never told the population of Trinidad and Tobago that they entered into private deals. They entered into private deals with certain public listed companies not to put anybody on the board. How could you protect the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago by entering into private deals where you have no governance over some of these public entities? This government will not do that. This government will ensure that the taxpayers are protected by all means legally necessary. Another thing that this government has done, and the unpatriotic voices and noises and the false news have rushed to attack. And I've realized, sitting here today, I realize that there's some in this country who do not want what is best for Trinidad and Tobago. That's right. There are some in this country who will go to any lengths and utilize anything necessary to destroy Trinidad and Tobago. And whilst this government is in place, we will not allow that. Madam Speaker, I put the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago on warning. Look very closely at what is happening, what has happened, and what will happen. Listen carefully to who says what. Listen carefully who objects to a revenue authority. Listen carefully who objects to following the money legislation. Listen carefully to who objects to explain your wealth. Listen carefully to those who take objection to us entering into international treaties to say who has what in what account. Those are the people who are out to destroy this great country of ours. Unpatriotic behavior. You hear a lot of noise, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about diversification. You hear a lot of pundits and punters who want to tell us how to diversify an economy. The single largest Fortune 500 brand that is homegrown in the Caribbean is an entity called Sandals. This is an entity, there is only one Sandals. There is only one Beaches. They are recognized as being the best in class in the world. Again, rather than be proud of our Caribbean heritage, they want to go and say, don't go with Sandals. How you reach with Sandals? You know, this country has never asked them how they reach with OAS. And perhaps that's a question we should ask. The single largest corruption scandal in the world is OAS. Presidents in Brazil have gone to jail because of OAS. And let them on that side explain to us on the 4th of September 2015, the deal they got into with OAS. And I'll remind the country, the single largest corruption scandal in the world.
Members, please, I would not tolerate the crosstalk. Each member will have their opportunity. Each member will have their opportunity.
They have the gall, Mr. Deputy Speaker. They have the audacity to ask why we are borrowing money, why we are taking measures to stabilize an economy. Let me remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The single largest corruption scandal in the world is what happened in OAS in Brazil. It has brought down government of Brazil. There has been so much corruption. They actually had a percentage of their revenue dedicated to bribes. So let me tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago how that's relevant. And Urupuchis is rah-rah-rahing as usual. You know how it's relevant? $7 billion in cash. $7 billion in cash was utilized by that government to give to OAS. Because you know why, Mr. Deputy Speaker? If you go for international financing, there's oversight. They will want to know how every cent is paid. And if that wasn't bad enough, on the 4th of September 2015, the last working day before a general election, they signed a deal with OAS to let OAS out of the bag, off the hook, and that taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago could not terminate OAS, a company that had already crashed, was in bankruptcy, and the subject of the single largest corruption scandal and investigation in the world.
Honourable Member, your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. Care to avail yourself?
Yes, please, Deputy
Proceed.
Speaker. So let us understand that that is who they wanted to do business with. But this government has chosen for the people of Tobago the single largest and best brand in hotel, born and bred in the Caribbean, Sandals. And we will accept no criticism for that. We will not take on any unpatriotic talk because we will ensure that Sandals is built in Tobago for the people of Tobago who they have ignored. Another area to just talk on very quickly is the area of corruption. So let's listen and hear where the noise comes from now. The area of corruption and what this government has done about corruption. That is unprecedented in all previous governments. First of all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Hoover South, first one. First of all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, allow me to remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago, constitutionally, the only people who can investigate and charge for criminal activity is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And we'll come to that shortly as well. And then the Director of Public Prosecutions, Oropuch East making noise, Naparima making noise. Listen on carefully, people of Trinidad and Tobago, because we're talking about corruption. The DPP and the TTPS, you will be paying bail.
Members again. Members again, each member will have the opportunity. Right, the member have 13 more minutes to complete his discourse. Please, let's listen in silence.
I know, the overdraft and stuff. So we're dealing with corruption and the issue of corruption. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago that criminal charges are handled by the Director of Public Prosecution and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. But did we as a government throw our hands up in the air? No. What we did is we went and found the best in class, international investigators, forensic auditors, and lawyers, sat down very quietly, did a tremendous amount of work, and those matters have now been filed in the court. Matters on behalf, not for this administration, but on behalf of the citizens, the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We have followed the money. We have done the investigations. We have passed that information to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I hear Oropuch East making a lot of noise. He is a defendant in one of those matters.
Deputy Speaker, 14, 4 and 6, let him discuss.
Overruled. Proceed.
Thank you very much. Everything I say is the truth, you know. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, listen carefully from now going all the way in at those who make the most noise when issues of corruption are raised, when issues about the Revenue Authority are raised, when issues of following the money are raised, when issues of explain your wealth are raised. Those are the persons that we must look at. This government has tackled corruption. This government has gone after the elements of corruption. This government has made it very clear that it will not tolerate corruption in the awards of contracts. This government has been faced, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with billions of dollars in claims by contractors. And we have been trying to protect the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. But you know what we found? The documents don't exist. When we go to defend these cases, all of these contracts being awarded between the period 2010 and 2015, the documents in support don't exist. In fact, some of the procurement documents, you have four of the same tenders, four tenders with the same handwriting for different entities being put in. When we go now and we try to find the documentation supporting the work being done, it does not exist. But what exists are certificates signed by people who may have certain connections saying that work was done. But no single document behind that. And that is what they're using to support their claims, not against this government, not against the PNM, but against the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? And what we have done is we have stood up and we faced it frontally. And we have said that we will do what we can for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And there is no deal cutting here. There is nobody here saying, I'll give you the check if you give me a percent. That has not happened here. But that may have happened previously. And that is something that this government is not going to tolerate. They talk about the overdraft. And again, this is a prime, great example of an attempt to mislead the population of Trinidad and Tobago. We just heard it said on the other side that legally the overdraft is supposed to be 10%. We heard it said that it was supposed to be 10%. We came to this parliament with the participation of maybe some on the other side. My recollection is there was no objection by the other side, and we raised the percentage of the overdraft in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And there are allegations. I tell you something. Anytime I stand up here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I say somebody has broken the law, I guarantee Trinidad and Tobago, I have the evidence that those people have broken the law. So we have some on the other side talking about breaking the law. There is no breaking of the law taking place by this government with respect to the overdraft. The overdraft ceiling was lifted. We have now a 20% by Parliament. By Parliament. So once again, the people who should know best, the people who can vote on it.
Silence. Silence.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can stand here today and unlike what was just said and telling the population that the overdraft was maxed out and that we have exceeded the overdraft, which is the exact words that Siparia used. Exactly. Today, the overdraft in Trinidad and Tobago being managed by this government stands at 77.8%. 77.8%. How is that breaking the law? These are the facts. So people of Trinidad and Tobago, if that is what is being spurned and put forward by those on the other side, ignore them. If that comes from the highest level, ignore them. Because when we say things on this side, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the facts are there, the supporting documentation is there, and everything is there. Right? As the documents here from DOPI. Right?
Member. Again, when this member is finished with his discourse, we will. We'll be proceeding on lunch. If anyone is desirous of having an early lunch, feel free to proceed. Right? Do not let the Speaker have the authority in order to send you or anyone on both sides for an early lunch. Right? Proceed.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, we on this side today tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago unreservedly and proudly that there is growth, that everything the Minister of Finance has told Trinidad and Tobago this morning is true.
And they don't want that to be true.
And there is positivity, and there is hope for Trinidad and Tobago. And we will continue to work night and day. And I can tell you something, because I have been privileged enough to be asked by the Honorable Prime Minister to accompany him on some of these trips and visits. And unlike what we are told that happened previously, it is only work taking place here. I have had not a single head of any government in this world whatsoever say anything negative about the member for Diego Martin West. But I remember, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I remember being very embarrassed going to Jamaica in that year that Jamaica and Trinidad celebrated 50 years of independence, and walking into the Jamaica Immigration Hall and seeing all the pride that Jamaica had a few weeks after their celebration. And the immigration officer, when she saw my passport, asking me if I was from Trinidad, I said yes with a sense of pride. And she reminded me, and it brought great embarrassment to me, that what had happened with the Trinidad and Tobago delegation in Jamaica in that year and how they had embarrassed Trinidad and Tobago. You have had not one single report of that type of behavior here. Again, the noise. So, we reject the Kamlanomics, economics. We reject the false news. We reject the lies. In fact, it was interesting. They just held up a document to say, look at here. And I'll tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago, when 2018, and they were referring to an outdated report, 2017 Auditor General's report. We'll send you the new report. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank the people of Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West for the opportunity to continue to contribute on their behalves. We give the assurance on this side that there will be no false news. We have delivered in our term the hard and the difficult news. We don't shy away from it. The important point that I conclude with is we came in under difficult circumstances, our revenue dropping from 20 billion to under $1 billion. We have held the economy together, stabilized the economy. Despite what they talk about unemployment, it is 1%. What you said the unemployment was 5%. The unemployment is 5%. Inflation is 1%, which is a record. And there have been no allegations against this government about going out and hiring persons who are not qualified, who don't come to work, and who are being paid for not doing anything. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with those few words, I tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago that you are in good hands, and may God continue to bless our country.
Honorable members, it's now 1:26. We break for lunch and we'll resume at 2:30.